Okay, I think we're about ready. Getting started in just a second here. Gonna make sure the stream echo's coming through. Okay, yep. A little quieter than I'd like. I think one of my goals for the next couple of weeks is going to be looking into a slightly better microphone setup. With that being said, I'll be ready to get started, just organizing my windows and all that. Oh, that's disorienting. I'm so sorry. Something I'm becoming aware of is that for whatever reason, the OBS doesn't play very well with Scholar when it's in full screen. So I'm trying to set up my windows so that I can still see everything when it inevitably minimizes. Okay, almost there. Thank you for your patience with all this, by the way. Should have this sorted out by next time. Okay. That's... It's a little janky still. That's okay. I'm almost ready to go. Oh, there we go. Okay. Gotta find exactly the right setup for it. I think it actually has to do with Chrome. That's interesting. So, just for a little transparency into what is happening behind the scenes here, I'm trying to get it set up so that I can monitor everything in my second monitor. And unfortunately, with the way the streaming software is set up, it's not letting me see everything as expected, and so I'm having to kind of juggle things around a little bit. But I think that'll be acceptable for the time being. So, while I'm continuing to get the setup fixed over here, thank you again for your patience with that, I am going to just provide a short general update on how everything's been going. As always, first of all, I want to thank everybody for the support. Really have been having a wonderful time interacting with everybody on stream and in the comments and in Discord. It's really been amazing, and I'm grateful for the engagement and for the feedback. And yeah, it's just been been really great. I've been listening to some reviews and such regarding the game, and I am trying to figure out what the common threads are in Dark Souls 2 criticism, however you want to phrase it. I think I've kind of started to zero in on what some of the concerns are with the game. To a certain extent, I'm finding myself agreeing with some of those critiques. And then, on the other hand, there are things that I am a little perplexed by. So, for example, I am finding that the game overall is a little bit jankier than I remembered. There's a little bit of roughness around the edges, which is unfortunate. Some technical shortcomings that I don't necessarily disagree with. But, like that, for example, you see the blurring around Valencia as I started to turn there? If that happens again. Yeah, that's interesting. But also, I'm finding that there's a trend in the discourse where, unfortunately, the critiques around the game tend to... This isn't everyone, but in my experience thus far, they tend to kind of hover around the technical flaws of the game primarily, and not really spend a whole lot of time addressing the artistry of the game or the environmental storytelling or any of that stuff. So I'm trying to find a balance in terms of my own experience. Like, how do I reconcile my own feelings about the game, which are largely based in the emotional connection that I have to it, as well as the appreciation that I have for it as a piece of video game art, with the acceptance of the technical limitations, the bugs, the glitches, stuff like that, that are unfortunately, a part of the experience that can't really be avoided. And it's been really eye-opening. It's been really fun just going through everything and looking for opportunities to, I guess, like challenge my beliefs and hear what other people think. I've also been playing through the vanilla version of the game, so not Scholar, and comparing the two, and that's been fun. I'm going to try one more thing to fix the stream. Sorry for the distraction over here, but it's still not quite playing nice. Just want to make sure that I can read chat if people stop by. Oh, okay. There we go. So I think that's everything. I think now that that's sorted, we can actually get started with the run proper. And I'll just try to keep an eye on the stream health. Oh, wait a minute. It's a good thing I checked. Okay, good. Just checked on my phone and everything seems okay. Alright, so let's starting over. Hello everyone. Hope you've had a good week. And thank you for checking out the stream. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. Great to have you. If you're new to the channel, this run is a run of Scholar of the First Sin, Dark Souls 2, on PC. And specifically, it's a run that's focused on trying to evaluate the game both from an artistic and a fun standpoint, but also to look at some of the criticism that's been levied against the game, try to understand where that criticism is coming from, and then to go through and provide an analysis of the game's levels, combat mechanics, systems, etc., etc. I'm a game developer. I've been working in the games industry for several years now on small indie projects and larger projects as well. And I think I have at least some background and hopefully some ability to kind of give insight into both what I perceive to be the challenges this game faced in development, how the developers overcame some of those challenges and maybe could have approached other challenges better, but also how I as a game developer see the ways in which, if I'm lacking the proper word, but the ways in which some of these, they worked to bring this world to life, both in terms of the art and the tools invested. So today we're going to be going through the Huntsman's Copse and approaching the Skeleton Lords, ideally the skeleton chariot as well, executioner chariot, and then moving on to Earthen Peak. I'm very eager to get to the Iron Keep because that's an area where a lot of people find a great degree of friction with the game, and so I'm looking forward to getting a chance to experience that and see if I agree with their assessments. And I think I just need to level up a little bit and then get going. We're just going to look at what other items I have in my inventory. I was playing around with some of these. I am interested in messing around with the Saint Spear a little bit and with the twin blades. So I'll probably pop my dexterity up a little bit so that I can experiment with that as a tool and see how that compares to my sort of sword and board-esque approach thus far. Because I do want to evaluate different weapons and see how the experience changes with that. And Ricard's rapier would be fun to play with as well. One of the things I noticed about folks critiquing the game is that they tend to play a very specific way with a specific amount of tools, and I want to see how my experience changes if I mix that up a little bit. With that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and level up with the Herald, and then I'm going to move on. And folks, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, things you'd like me to try or explore, however you feel about the game is totally fine. I'm not here to try to insist that anybody needs to interact with the game or have a perspective on the game that is one specific thing or another. Really, my goal here is just to explore the game at a leisurely pace and try to crystallize my own thoughts and feelings about it, and then hopefully point out some things that maybe people were unaware of or hadn't noticed, or just help to show things in a bit of a new light. And then maybe by doing all that, give you the tools to continue to develop your own feelings about the game on your own as well. Hopefully that made some sense. I should go back and get ornifex. One thing I think maybe I'll do. Hang on. We could also do the gargoyles real quick, and I just want to make sure that I have a luck stone. I have 6. Oh my god. So something that was kind of interesting that came up in a critique that I was listening to was the idea that you don't have access to enough fragrant branches of yore or luck stones when you start the game. And my finding thus far has been that yes, they are a precious resource, but there are far more in Scholar than there were in the base game, and there are also more things you can use them on. I think there's a total of 17 individual branches and 17 petrified things that you can use to like thaw them out, or whatever the term for it is, like to free them. So that's pretty cool. And I feel like in Scholar, compared to the original game, you're actually given more options and more flexibility, despite the fact that things are walled off a little earlier on. So funny enough, for some reason, I never actually took the time to look at this guy's face. I didn't realize just how normally human he looked. I thought that there was like a little gremlin or goblin under there or something. Can't believe all these years I never actually looked at his face. Wow. So this area is interesting, like many of the areas in the game, in that it is part of the Bastille, but it also has a completely different name associated with it, namely Belfry Luna, and it feels like its own thing that kind of stands apart. The characters in this area are obviously kind of unique looking and don't quite fit what you've seen thus far. It's a very striking image when you come in to see them all piled together in a heap like this, and it's something that feels very fairy tale almost. It feels a little less, I suppose, of the traditional aesthetic of the Soul series. It feels like it's doing something a little bit more, yeah, fairy tale, like fantasy. It's a little more out there. If you take a look at this guy, you can see that there's a plume kind of coming off of his helmet, and he looks like he has some traveling adventurer gear. You know, a couple of, looks like he's got a mug attached to his hip there, a pouch, maybe a coin purse, and then a sheath for a sword on his back. So it's interesting. He looks like maybe a gnome type adventurer character that you might find in I don't know, World of Warcraft or something like that, although less cartoonish. And it's perplexing to see sort of the juxtaposition of this almost cute, endearing, familiar fantasy archetype with the macabre, you know, this pile of corpses that are simultaneously kind of cute and endearing and adorable, but also really harrowing in a way as well. And these guys, unless I'm missing something, I think they do have faces. It's just really hard to make out the details with a camera like this. But they are, whoops. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to try and get a zoom in here. Oh yeah, so they definitely do have faces, but they're all kind of faded and grayed out, which adds to, they almost look wooden, which I don't know if it's just a an artifact of like the low poly texture or if that's intentional. But either way, it gives the place a feeling of whimsy and horror at the same time, which I think is something that kind of permeates many aspects of the game itself. So it's a nice little microcosm of the rest of the game. I'm going to check something real quick. Okay, so let's talk to this guy.
The bell belongs to the princess, it do. Stay back and we slice you to bits. Me and my chums, we shan't be left. Stay back all your pieces. Tiniest pieces.
Oh shit, I actually didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I'm sorry, friend. Oh, that's a weird little audio glitch. I don't know if you guys heard that, but the audio, like the echo, is coming in the left channel, but not in the right.
A long, long
His voice is all distorted. Yeah.
To guard this bell for the prince's honor. Stay away, foul undead, or you will be a goner. Stay back! It belongs to the princess, it do!
Yeah, the echo is like starting in stereo, but then it's going off to the left. I wonder if they were trying to do like a simulated reflection off the walls or something. But yeah, like the fact that he's talking in rhymes as well makes it feel like more fairy tale.
You wish to guard the bell, you do. For the prince and the princess forever. For true. Useless fool. Filthy undead. Be gone right now and it's off with your head.
We got an invader. That's fun. I'm no good at dealing with invaders, so I'm just gonna, I don't know, pop a... Do I have any resin? Not seeing it. Let's just scroll past it. Okay, I'll just try a straight up fight. Hello? This is kind of fun. I like how he's using the ring to mask that he's a red phantom, although when you invade somebody in this space, it's not. Oh, maybe he's like a member of the Covenant. I think I could use an Estus, but this is more of a dueling area, so I don't feel like super inclined to. If he does, then I will. If not, I'll just try to have a straight up fight. I'm at a disadvantage here because my weapon is so short compared to his. Oh, he's gonna get me. Oh, he could have had me dead to rights. I guess he was low on stamina. I'll just go for it. There we go. Nice. That was fun. Cool. Honestly, like, I do quite enjoy... Oh, Titanite chunk, yeah. I do quite enjoy, like, engaging with the multiplayer components. With the PvP aspect of the game, I'm just really... I never build my characters around, like, gear them towards being good at PvP for the most part. And they're not very creative and flexible when it comes to, like, handling a variety of different player builds. They tend to be generalist builds designed to handle, like, a variety of PvE situations with a few simple versatile options. So, you know, like, the axe itself is pretty strong, it's pretty flexible, it's not great, it's not the best weapon in the game, but it feels nice and solid and dependable, kind of like the, whatchamacallit, the, saw cleaver in Bloodborne. It's one of those things that can carry you through the game. The fire longsword that you get early on is even better, honestly. But yeah, but I believe if you join the Covenant here, you get the ability to invade people who are trespassing through here who are not part of the Covenant. And so it's a great little place for pretty straightforward PvP invasions. And it's also one of those things where both people benefit from it. If you get invaded and you successfully defend, or if you're the invader, you are still getting access to the Titanite chunks. The Titanite chunks are high value, so you have, you know, participating. You don't have to participate in this for very long in order to get something out of it that's meaningful and tangible. Unlike some covenants where you have to wait to, like, you have to have 10 successful, like, victories or whatever, and only after then, and turning in those items, do you get your discrete reward. Although I think in this game in particular, oh shit, whoa, damn, okay, there's fewer instances like that. Like, even in the, you'll usually be getting tokens of fidelity or sunlight tokens or whatever they're called pretty consistently. But that being said, yeah, some of that stuff, like sunlight token, doesn't have any immediate benefit other than the eventual, like, Covenant reward. And so it's nice to participate in this Covenant and just get, like, chunks, which are always going to be helpful. there's never a downside to having them, and they are received consistently as well. So interesting. That is that the Oh right. So I believe that Black Raven is associated with either Alkin or Ven, and so you've gotten a little bit of a taste of the narrative of a prince and a princess that had some sort of forbidden romance. And if I remember correctly, there's a bell in the Iron Keep that you can ring as well, and the prince and the princess would communicate with one another by using the bell to kind of signal their love for one another, something like that. So there is a fairy tale romance that's going on amidst all of the chaos and horror and, you know, global destruction and decay. There, amidst all of that, all the conflict and everything inherent to this world, these two people found love at a distance and used the bell to kind of keep it alive. And it's an interesting way of taking the tradition of the, you know, the bells of awakening and reincorporating a bell that is, you know, rung in a ceremonial way, but iterating on that and making it part of this sort of fairy tale love story. Now, if you don't particularly like the inclusion of a fairy tale aesthetic or whatever in Dark Souls, that's totally fine. That's totally legitimate. But I do think, you know, they found a way to take something that was a big part of Dark Souls 1 and bring it back with a unique and unexpected twist, and also to weave it into a covenant, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, we're about to fight the gargoyles, which we fought just before getting access to the bell in Dark Souls 1. And if you listen carefully to the music, you'll hear that it is literally the same exact music. I don't think it's a remix or a remaster. I believe it is exactly the same specific track. So it's all a nice way of harkening back to that. Now, personally, I don't really like this boss fight because I feel like the individual gargoyles themselves are less memorable. Their design is less compelling. The fact that they're just sort of all uniformly black is cool in its own way, like the alabaster stone or whatever they're made out of, or onyx probably, is striking in its own way. But given that the individual sorry, one second. The individual gargoyles themselves are, you know, smaller and more uniform in their appearance, and that more of them descend on you faster. And at least so far, I haven't seen any fire attacks yet. It's all just like melee attacks. Oh, we got something. Yeah, that's cool. That's a nice innovation. It just feels like, I don't know, kind of a... I won't say that the fight is not special or not good. Like, the idea of having a mob boss fight or a boss fight where you're kind of encouraged... Oh, there's the flames. There's the flames again. Encouraged to specifically, you know, rely on co-op if you're at lower levels. Nothing wrong with that, especially since you're in an area that is pretty explicitly designed for multiplayer interaction to begin with. Having a boss fight that's incentivized for multiplayer play there as part of it, but then also giving you the option to have a pretty dependable but not overpowered enemy, or not enemy, phantom that you can summon to help you with the enemies, is pretty good. It's just, I don't like getting swarmed by all the enemies simultaneously. That's a bit frustrating. I will say that overall, though, it feels like a nice inclusion. I think that the game is better for having it than it would be if it were not in the game at all. It just feels like I'm not a fan of like the being rushed by enemies, if that makes sense. And I do feel like that was a bit excessive. Although on the other hand, you know, if I came back later, like this is still very early in the game. If I just played for 20 more hours and came back later, infused my weapon, upgraded a little bit more, upgraded my strength, then I could have melted through them with no problem. So it really just comes down to like how eager you are to engage with this particular scenario at this particular time. I think it's very subjective as to whether or not it's a good design. I will say that there is something very cool about it's very subtle, but like even though you have the bonfire right there, it's not far at all. Still having the stair be broken such that your character can't get back up, there's always like this little moment of panic or of like, oh shit, what have I done? When you fall off the stair and land and realize you can't get back up. That little moment of panic, especially if you think there might be like a, what do you call them? The mimics in the chest, is just a great little emotional prod from the game that I appreciate. And then this area, after that, the chaos and the frenetic nature of that boss fight, just the sereneness here. I'm just gonna take it slow for a sec. Looking back on the tower and the castle, looking at everything you've come through to get here, you know, just kind of taking in the scenery and the environment, and then seeing this like achingly lonely bonfire at the end of it all, simultaneously like very, very lonely, but also extremely peaceful in this uniquely Dark Souls sort of way. Just feels, I don't know, it feels really great. I don't, I wish I had a more poetic way of describing it, but it just feels very, very satisfying and fulfilling to come through the Bastille and to get here. And what is this called? Oh, it's just called Upper Ramparts. I thought it had a different name to it. But also, you know, many times, there's a few times going through this level where I've been like, okay, that's it, right? Like I just, I opened the last door, I found the last key, I beat the last boss, I found the last secret. But after all that, this one level, right? Let's take a look at how many different areas there are. There was the initial area with the holding cells. There was the workshop that we found that was the halfway point. There was the servants' quarters where we just were previously that led to the other belfry area. There's the area leading to Sinner's Rise with Strayed. And then there is the back entrance. And then that's just the first part of the Bastille. Like, there's two other sections, right? There's the entrance to Sinner's Rise, and then there's Belfry Luna. So when you put all that together, this one level is actually very vast, but it's not just like sprawling out chaotically in all directions. It feels very well designed and very well layered and interconnected at points too. So I think this is probably, it's definitely one of the best designed levels in the game. That being said, I hate this. Like, oh, and this definitely got to be a reference to the Capra Demon, right? Like with the dogs and the little arch up there as well. So, not a big fan of this, and I'm probably gonna get mogged, but I'm gonna try anyway. See how well I do. Okay, need to heal. Need to heal. Need to heal, please. Just prime 2. Alright. So, and just like before, I can kind of come up here, get the high ground Anakin, and see how that goes. So I believe, shit. All of this was in the base game as well, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't remember if the number of dogs were the same or anything like that. But it's interesting that the idea of sin and the first sin and what constitutes a sin is interesting and is something that the game explores pretty extensively. But the... oh, shit. What did I get there? I do wish this game had like the feature that Elden Ring introduced recently of like seeing your recent items. 1 second. Enchanted Falchion. Okay. So, you know, having gone through Sinner's Rise and experienced everything there and learned about the lost sinner, now coming across this other character that is a sinner, I think you as a player will probably have been primed to feel like the term sin and sinner have a great deal of importance beyond just whatever associations you might have with the name. And so even though this is just some random red phantom that invades you with some dogs or whatever, the fact that he comes at you after the significant boss fight, after a path of no return near a bonfire, and then down this little hidden alleyway, really does kind of lend more weight to the concept of sin and sinners. And even if you don't know anything about this character, which I don't know much about them, I think helps reinforce that through line of the game of how sin affects the world by just calling more attention to it. Right now, I believe I got a couple of things from him. The first being the dragon tooth. So let's read this real quick. A giant dragon tooth uses a great hammer as solid as a boulder. This tooth is said to be taken from a dragon, but the truth of this claim is unclear. What is certain is that it bears some mystical power and its wielder gains resistance to magic and fire. So this was the weapon wielded by Havel the Rock in Dark Souls 1 and again in 3. And what's sort of frustrating here is that we get this trope pretty frequently in Dark Souls 2, where we're given an item and the item is said, the description goes something like, this item is really, really great and cool, but maybe it's not. You know, like, this item is said to have belonged to a great king, or it could have just been some asshole who, like, made the sword in his backyard and it's actually worth nothing, you know. Or that person making it in his backyard was actually, like, a legendary smith. And some of that is intriguing because it lets the player kind of speculate and be creative with their own interpretations of what's happening. But after a while, like, it does feel sometimes like you have to do a lot of homework to understand the story of the game. And even though I invested a lot of time in it, I'm not all that great at it personally. I don't think I ever have the talent to be on the level of somebody like Sinclair Lore, for example. Like, those guys are just awesome at being able to come up with theories and ideas, both philosophically and technically, about the lore. And like other people like Loki and you know, I'm blanking on the names right now, but Hawkshaw is another good one. The Ashen Hollow. There's a bunch of people out there that have made great, or Aegon of Astora, I think was another one, who have just like made really great, insightful lore analyses. I'm not anywhere near their level, but I don't think you should have to be in order to understand what's going on. And sometimes I'm like, can you just be clear? Can you just tell me that this was Havel's thing? You know, does it always have to be ambiguous? Because then inevitably that results in these arguments online of like, it has to be Havel's because it literally looks like the one he was using. But it says, you know, the truth of this claim is unclear, so you can't know. It could have been one of Havel's knights. It could have just been a Havel fanboy, like with Ornstein. And sometimes I find that stuff really endearing and really motivating for discussion. One second. Okay. And other times, I find it can be really frustrating if I just want to get an answer. Sorry, there was a noise in the background there. No big deal. So, with that being said, the other item that we got, I think there were 3 things. I'm not sure what the second one was, but the third was petrified something. So let's take a look at that real quick. An unidentified petrified object, pleasant to the touch despite its looks, a rare and peculiar thing to be certain, but one without a known purpose. So, the this is something that you can trade to the 2 crows. And I'm just trying to put everything together. It's just, I can't tell you for sure what the lore is here. But if you're familiar at all with the Soul series, it should be enough to intrigue you and catch your eye, because we rang a bell and then we fought some gargoyles and then we went through like and found an isolated tower, and then we found a place that looked like the Capra Demon and has something related to Havel, and then some sort of ancient mystic relic whose purpose has kind of been lost to time, guarded by a sinner. And everything that's happening there to me suggests that the legacy of the characters and items from Dark Souls 1 has returned and has found a new purpose. And it's interesting that rather than being associated with a hero before, they are also associated with the sinner now, by contrast. But also, you know, Havel was speculated by fans to maybe have either gone hollow or been involved in some sort of a plot to betray Gwyn or something like that, which is why he was locked in the tower. And so there might be a parallel there with that as well. So layers of interesting stuff going on. Overall, a small diversion, but one that I think was definitely worthwhile. I'm going to go talk to little bell guy again. I forgot to check in on him. But I think I'm also going to take a moment and see, can I use the twin blade now? I think I should be able to. Where is it? There we go. Oh, 26. Okay, one more. There's 60 left. Okay, so X 26. And I think we just need some more health. One with that. The levels are starting to peter off a little bit in terms of how many times I level up per cycle here. Already at level 25. Soul memory at 582. Okay. So, I want to start leveling up the twin blade, but more importantly, I want to infuse it pretty soon too. So, let's see. Prepare, reinforce. Okay. So, let's find the twin blade. Let's get it to +3. Why do I always struggle to find it? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. We still have plenty of large Titanite shards too, and I think we can buy more from Steadyhand McDuff. And I want to try the rapier as well, and so we'll do this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Relatively low cost. So, granted, we're like 15 hours into the game at this point, and we had to invest a good chunk of souls. With that being said, just want to talk about our options in combat at this point. So, right now, if I'm unsatisfied with my starting weapon, these are the things that I've been able to find without not like having to even look too hard or go to too many secret areas or anything like that. A variety of different types of shields, including shields that are designed more for parrying, a variety of ranged options, including spells, miracles, and bows, a variety of standard and esoteric weapons, short-range weapons, long-range weapons, weapons that are good at dealing damage against unarmored opponents or armored opponents, weapons that deal status build-up, weapons that are like nimble and flexible and versatile, weapons that are monstrous and unwieldy and ridiculous, but very effective at dealing with crowds and large monsters. And so, weapons that have elemental infusions. And so, really, wait, this one does magic damage as well. I forgot about that. Cool. So, really, even if, oh yeah, it's like a magic halberd. Look at that. That moveset is really cool. There's an upward swing for a forward attack, and then a broad swipe. That's a really interesting 1-2 moveset. It feels quite fast and responsive as well. Let's see the strong attack. That feels a little bit clunkier, but I'm guessing it's more meant to be used two-handed. Let's see. Yeah. So, that's really fast for a weapon of that size. Stamina regen is a little slower than I'd like, but 1, 2. Okay, so there's a slow build up. 1, 1. But then after the build up, you get to combo that pretty effectively. What about the strong attack? Overhead. I don't tend to like the attacks that have the little like backwards wrist motion like that, because I feel like the wind up for the follow through is a little bit excessive. But still, like, this is such a great weapon. I should have experimented with that more. But yeah, quite a large variety of stuff to experiment with. Yeah, probably need a bit of a lighter armor. Very heavy though. I need to start putting some more points into vitality. I'm gonna do this. So let's try that for now. There we go. Okay. So this gives us a few different options to play with. And I think for now, we'll just go to the Huntsman's Copse and see how things are there, but probably go and infuse our weapon in just a little bit. Now, I thought for sure... Yes, we did get to the Copse. Okay. I think we already went through that first little area with the ambushes and stuff like that. But I want to go through it again very briefly because recently I was listening to the critique by Feeble King, and was noting that there was this consistent throughput of critique about how the game constantly sends ambushes at you, and the ambushes are unfair, and specifically the idea being that there are hidden archers everywhere that you can't see. So one person there fell behind me, was ambushed by one person. I want to go back to the bonfire real quick and see if that ambush felt justified. There's one. I will say that I think it's a deliberate choice that the tones in color of the enemies' outfits blend in very naturally with the environment, like camouflage. So if you look like that, the greens and the earth tones and everything blends in very naturally. Even the boots, the metallic color of the boots kind of stands out more. But again, like this area thematically is supposed to be like populated by brigands essentially, and so I think it makes sense that they would go out of their way to blend into the environment to try and ambush unsuspecting, victims along the road. Now, maybe you don't find that a fun sort of thing to engage with. That's okay. You're not obligated to. But I do think if you're going to design an area that has, enemies that ambush you, giving them a narrative reason to do so, and then designing their outfits around that concept so that they feel visually cohesive with that narrative is important and effective. So let's see. Come down here. So interestingly, there was a pretty subtle but still quite audible whoosh and then impact as the character landed down like right next to me. He took damage from the fall, and I had a couple of seconds to react to him before he attacked me. Over here, I never noticed this before, but there's a couple of graves there, and I think they're made out of metal, if I recall correctly. And then there are they might actually not be graves per se, because there are those two iron rungs with bits embedded in the rock over there. So it makes me wonder if there were chains that were kind of threaded through those and used to restrain something. Very nice little subtle detail that you can catch out of the corner of your eye as you're going through. So the argument here was that this area is unfair because as you enter, there are hidden archers and you don't know where those archers are, and you get ambushed. So just see what happens if we just stand here. Okay, there's an archer that is clearly visible to us. He doesn't attack very frequently. He's right across the way. But let's say we don't see him and we keep running. Run straight to the door. What happens? We open the door. Okay, somebody pushes through the door. We go back. And there's this little hollow. And we go back out. So we have one enemy with dual weapons that pursues us, but is not particularly fast, not particularly threatening. We have a second enemy that is very, very weak and easy to dispatch of, and easy to lure out into the open. And now we can take our time and listen for the audio cue, which clearly came from over there. We can see the hollow standing right over there, and then go deal with him. If we look carefully, we can look around and see, okay, we're in an area where we're already being ambushed, so it's natural to start to look for other ambushes. We get ambushed by one person, then when we have enough time to deal with that, we get ambushed by a second person. And if we want to, we could go up and deal with the archer right away. If we want to explore, with understanding that there is less visibility, and there are enemies kind of crawling out of this hole, so we have to be careful, but they are very, very frail enemies. They don't have powerful attacks at all. And we can actually take cover from the arrows by sticking to this side of the arena. We come up here, and our enemy has actually left. I think he's moved on, taken refuge somewhere else, trying to stalk us. So that to me, we'll talk about that in just a second. But that to me, the enemy kind of trying to find a way around to, kind of get into our heads, I think is pretty compelling. if that's indeed what's happening. But this is the area we came through before where we opened the shortcut back up, I believe. Yep. So no need to go back here right now. But yeah, that's what I kept hearing over and over again in Feeble King's critique, was that this area was just unfair and unreasonable because you were constantly getting ganked by squads of enemies and you didn't really have any recourse, and there were hidden archers everywhere. There's literally one fucking archer that is like fires at a very slow rate of fire and that you can hear the audio cue for. You're never ganked by more than 1 or 2 people at a time. When you are, you have an opportunity to maneuver around them and to leave. I don't see the problem. I don't know if I'm missing something, but also like my character here is using a completely unupgraded weapon that I'm not using particularly effectively. It scales off of oh no, it doesn't. Yeah, it only has like mediocre scaling. Part of its damage is allocated to magic damage, which I don't have any like affinity for. So really, like, I'm not fighting optimally at all. I'm not wearing heavy armor. I'm not using my shield very well, and yet that encounter was pretty easy to manage. I didn't have any issues with it at all, even not knowing where the enemies were going to come from. So I think the question kept coming up in that critique: am I supposed to engage with the enemies one by one and fight them all, or am I supposed to run through every enemy and run through every area and skip all the enemies? And if you had run through and skipped all the enemies, what would have happened was you would have come through here. The guy who fell down behind you would have followed you. You would have gotten to the door. Once you got to the door, oh, what the hell? Once you got to the door, the enemy would have pushed you back. You would have turned around, and then you would have been beset upon by 2 enemies at once. The one that fell down, and then the one that had just gotten up to pursue you. And now you'd be dealing with 3 enemies at a time from over here, plus the archer from over there with 4. Now, that's still not the end of the world, because again, these characters are not very highly armored. They don't have like great defensive capabilities. They don't have super difficult to memorize movesets. A single like combo, actually the light attack combo is probably better. A single 1, 2, 3 combo from a decently like appropriate weapon probably would have dispensed all of them. Now there are other characters that kind of try to ambush you and maneuver around, and that's cool too, but never does it really feel like you're overall getting unfairly ganked, at least to me. Even that one, like, you heard the whoosh beforehand, and by this point you should be kind of expecting an ambush, and there's only one of them. So yeah, I think it's pretty explicitly clear that you're heavily incentivized to not rush through the areas, because rushing through is the exact sort of behavior that's going to get you, that's going to aggro more enemies, draw them to your position, and limit your tactical options. So it's just like a really bad idea overall most of the time. I don't understand where the confusion was coming from with that. I do want to say that sometimes I find the online mechanics to be a little bit distracting, because if you're trying to immerse yourself in the game and you keep seeing like other people's builds with items that you've never seen before, it can be kind of a spoiler. It can be make your own build feel a little less special. It can just be kind of weird to see things that are totally out of place or like anachronistic for how far you are into the game or something like that, I will say I do like the kind of nimble, flexible, and dance-like moves that some of these characters are using. The way that the enemies, when I was attacking 2 of them up on the roof, the way that they seemed to like dance around and float through the air and pirouette and all that, to me was like really cool. I know it felt like a dance, and the idea that these are dark, filthy, murderous brigands are still still have something graceful and dexterous about them, I think is something that Miyazaki has really tried and succeeded, I would say, to incorporate into his overall design philosophy. He always wants even the most vile and gross and repugnant of enemies to have something elegant and beautiful to them, something noble, something sympathetic. So this is also like fully is not upgraded at all. I just wanted to kind of experiment with the different moveset and see what it felt like. So this is great. This weapon is very versatile in that it's great for sort of forward horizontal thrusting. You'll notice that your character moves forward a little bit, like quite a bit actually, with each thrust. So it's very good for pursuing like humanoid enemies or even just staying in range of bosses. Very, very good for PvP as long as you don't get parried. You can also hold up your shield and use it as like a spear. You'll notice that I'm keeping my shield up while thrusting out and through with the sword. Now obviously it's not going to be useful against crowds of enemies because it is specifically designed to handle single targets. But so you're not going to get any, like literally any swiping motions with the sword. It's purely for poking. But in addition to just being really fucking cool, this rapid thrust move is super useful for building up status effect. So if you put like bleed or poison on this, it will build that status effect up very quickly, which makes it ideal for, you know, that sort of thing. You can have this weapon, take it out and put like a poison stone on it and just build up poison and then swap to a, you know, kind of bigger unga bunga smash weapon and have the benefit of something that's quick and nimble and precise, and also something that's a little bit more devastating but simplistic and straightforward. You could have both, right? And so when I watch people play the game and complain about how it feels bad to like do a broadsword only run, I'm like, then I don't know. There's so many weapons, and even a single weapon can have both very specific but also very versatile like tactical advantages. And you don't even have to like invest a ton of Titanite or whatever in order to try out a new weapon. Okay, so like I haven't upgraded this at all. I'm not a dex build, but it's still carrying me very, very well into the game. Now, that enemy that I just fought there, I'm not sure what their name is, to be honest. But I do find that... 1 second. Probably good to try some of that. But I do find that their design veers a little bit too much. Or a friend of mine pointed out that their design feels a little bit like perhaps overly fantasy, a little excessive in that regard. It's a bit cartoonish, it's a bit exaggerated in a way that many of the other things in the series don't necessarily follow. It feels out of place. And I think there's some validity to that for sure. I was just talking about how things tend to feel a bit more graceful, or like even the things that are very macabre and dark and whatever and gross will have some element to them that makes them feel graceful, feel beautiful, feel noble to some extent. And those guys, you can kind of look at them and be like, well, that's a whole lot harder to see because they just look like something out of Diablo. Like they look very kind of straightforward, very like menacing, very like ogre-ish, and a bit over the top with like the chains all over their bodies and the kind of edgy looking sickles and stuff like that. So I can see why somebody would maybe bounce off of that particular aesthetic. That AI is having a hard day. So something you might notice there is that just then I unintentionally kind of veered off to the left. And what was happening there is that there's something about this weapon I haven't quite figured out yet. where let's see. Let me try this. Okay, that worked. Depending on how I'm standing, sometimes it seems like the weapon will kind of point me in the wrong direction. And I understand why people might experience that. I'm trying to see if I could figure out. Oh yeah, there we go. So if I start to thrust and then I move my control stick a little bit, it starts to reorient me, but just a little. And so I can understand why people might be a bit frustrated by that, because it seems like the weapon is not doing what you want it to. But at the same time, to me anyway, it just feels like oh, there's our friend Bashful Ray again. To me, it just feels like this weapon is a skillful, dexterous weapon, and you need to wield it skillfully. You need to aim your shots, and you need to be mindful about how you're using it. It's not going to, you know, it's not just a lock on and then like rapier go pew 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 type thing. Or just view ahead. Yes, absolutely. You're gonna need to treat it like a I don't know how else to explain it, but just like be very mindful, be very deliberate in the way that you approach using it, as opposed to a broadsword where you can just swing, 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 swing. With this, you have to aim every shot. Some people might find that to be excessive or boring or frustrating. That's totally fine. For me, I think it just adds an additional layer of skill to any given weapon. I just noticed there is a nice little heat distortion effect around your hand when you have the fireball equipped. It's not, or the pyromancy glove equipped. It's not the most like high res or high fidelity effect in the world or anything, but at the same time, it is pretty effective. It's a nice little detail to just have that there. So, you may have noticed that we have a couple of friends here lurking in the shadows for us, and their aggro radius is actually really short, so quite a long time to creep up on them. But I think this is one of those things where, like, if you run through the central path of the level, you're probably going to nice poison arrows. If you just run through the central path of the level, you're probably going to wind up aggroing a lot of those guys and having them come out of the shadows at you. So, but if you pay attention, you look carefully, you'll see them hiding there, and you have plenty of opportunity to go up to them and to engage with them on your terms, rather than waiting for them to come to you. I do like the fact that some of these characters are not entirely hostile. They're doing their own thing. They have their own little ambient noises and animations that they're playing. Almost looks like this guy's trying to write or to draw a circle. Oh no, I think he looks like he maybe has like a piece of chalk or something in his hand. Maybe that's just his finger. But either way, kind of cool. It's like a semblance of life and intelligence. Lots of runes carved on their body, so I've never seen them deciphered, but it is a very intriguing and very striking thing to look at. It looks like there's literally just carved into their flesh. That's a very striking image there. Oh, yeah. So, that guy was about to ambush us, which would have been unfortunate. That guy ambushed us too. But, again, 2 of them at a time. That's not that bad. And we could hear the sounds as they're approaching us, so it doesn't feel too excessive or exploitative, in my opinion. Take a look. Do we have rogue armor that we just got? Rogue armor, okay. Follow the thieves. Oh, that looks goofy. No, I'm not going to use that right now. I always use this one. That's fine. Kind of Spartan. Let's see. Oh yeah, I like the Varangian armor. So, with that being said, we've now I like this bridge. I think it's very imposing and kind of powerful looking. Feels kind of unnatural, feels a little out of place, which gives it, not in a way that breaks immersion, it just feels like it's been thrust into this environment. And it's kind of like taking over. Almost like it's terraforming the environment in a weird way, if that makes any sense. So this is the way I believe to the next area. So I want to hold off for now. Or it might be the way to the Skeleton Lord, just do it like that. I'll hold off on doing that for now. And go back and explore a little bit more over here, because there's some stuff I haven't quite found yet. So I want to talk about the poison moths. So the poison moths are an interesting addition, I think, in that they create an environmental hazard that is definitely a major threat. Like, you have to be careful and deal with poison, because it will affect you strongly and quickly if you don't. But at the same time, I believe you can lure enemies into the poison fields in order to damage them. So it's one of those hazards where you can subvert it for your own benefit if you are sort of creative with it. And even if that's not the case, you see what I mean about this, like the patchwork armor and everything like that just being like his face and how, I don't know, edgy it is. It kind of looks like the Butcher from Diablo, right? Not necessarily a critique, it's just something very particular about his aesthetic. I like the fact that this enemy feels very imposing due to his visual design, the size of the weapons and all that, and the additional like visual effect that's being applied to the impact. You know, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a visual distortion and like a little explosion of particles from the ground, so that it looks like he's digging up the earth a little bit with every impact, which I think is very effective. Just a little touch to make them feel a little bit scarier. But their defenses are very weak, so it's actually not particularly difficult to deal with them. Sorry, buddy. I thought there was a guaranteed item drop. Oh well. So the defenses are pretty low, so it's not very particularly hard to deal with them, but they're still made to feel like pretty genuinely terrifying because of their, you know, appearance and demeanor and the design of their weaponry. I thought this area was a bit bigger. I remember it being so, but we'll see. Oh, so the moths as well. I think they're an interesting inclusion because they provide an environmental hazard that, again, is not very hard to turn off if you just want to kill them and be done with them. But also, they, how do I say? They can be used in a creative way to kind of subvert the hazard that they present to the player by turning that onto enemies. The hazard that they provide is dangerous, and if you don't deal with it, it's going to hurt and you're going to regret it. But at the same time, it's something that you could reasonably, you know, mitigate with a couple of life gems, so it's not the end of the world. And the process of trying to figure out, you know, where they're coming from and locating them and then bringing them down with some sort of a ranged attack, I think, is also pretty satisfying at the end of the day. That guy, I know annoys some people, but I like the fact that you can kind of learn his path and figure it out. What is happening? And figure it out and then intercept him. It looks like I'm locked onto something outside. Oh, it's the moth up there. That was a little bit excessive there, I think, the radius of that lock on. Or distance, range, whatever. But yeah, so I actually really like the moths. They also, some of them, if you find them around the environment, they reward you for killing them with a unique item, if I remember correctly. And so it also just gives you an additional, like, thing to look for. The sound effects that they make is almost like grating. It's very like aggressive, for lack of a better word. And I think to my ears, it's too much. Like, I don't like the way it. I do not like the experience of listening to it, and not just from a, like, this is not my preference or whatever. It actually kind of hurts my ears, and that's not a good thing. But at the same time, I think they erred on the side of making it very, very distinctive so that players would have an easier time locating it, and then encouraging you to, look around and find them is a positive thing, and encourage you to engage with the verticality of the space. I mean, that's one way to look at it too. Like, this whole space is pretty vertical, a lot of things looping in on themselves, a lot of good verticality in the space overall. So having enemies that are above you, that rain down from above you, where you can see the attacks that are very clearly coming from above, and having that being paired with an audio cue, to me feels like exactly what you want to do if you're trying to train your players to look up and around, to try to find things in their environment. So overall, I think this is all, very positive. And it just goes to show how the inclusion and the implementation of even one enemy, not even enemy, just like environmental creature, can make a huge difference in the environment overall. I'm just hitting the tree, I guess. Oh, there we go. Yep, that's cool. Shows that the collision on the tree was pretty well done for a pretty mundane object. It's a good amount of work there to pull that off. Also a challenge to make sure that the fucking item falls correctly. It doesn't get stuck on the geometry or stuck on the tree or something like that. Oh shit, forget about this guy. So again, these are, I believe they're called the Cyan Knights, and they are Knights of King Vendrick or something like that. And I do like the fact that we're seeing them kind of spread out throughout the world a bit more evenly, and get a chance to spend more time with them, so to speak. I think the majority of them that we see some of them are in Drangleic Castle, and some of them are in the Undead Crypt. But I will say, this could be intentional, so it could be a good thing. But for all of their armor and pomp and circumstance and weaponry, they're pretty, like, nothing. They're pretty blah to actually fight against, both in terms of their moveset and their defenses and everything. So I wind up not feeling particularly, again, this is not the way that you have to do this sort of thing, but one way that you could potentially approach this. Whoa, shit, forgot about that. One way that you could approach designing an enemy like this is to say, okay, these are essentially going to be little mini bosses, because they're all going to, hold. 1 second, I should actually focus. They're all going to hold some sort of valuable object in the form of sublime bone dust. Wow, that was really dumb. That was really dumb. Okay, sorry, 1 second. No. That was my fault. They're all going to hold some valuable item in the form of a sublime bone dust. Oh my god. And as a result, encounters with them are going to feel like these little mini boss fights with commensurate rewards for those mini boss fights. And instead, they just kind of feel like pathetic pushovers. And if that's the idea, if that's the plan, then great, you've succeeded. I'm not sure if it is, though. So here, I'm actually trying to deliberately run through the area, because remember, one of the critiques of the game has been, I don't know if I'm supposed to fight all the enemies, or if I'm supposed to run through the whole space and skip all the enemies. So let's see what happens if we run through and just skip all the enemies like this. Okay. Is this viable? Is this meaningful? Is this compelling at all? Okay, so far I'm not really having fun skipping all the enemies. I know there's an item below. I'm gonna ignore that for now. I don't feel like this experience has been really positive per se. I have a whole bunch of them ganging up on me. There's an item over there that I can't really go pursue. I'm kind of put into a difficult position. And I'm probably going to get killed going through here. Maybe just barely made it. Yeah, so I think very clearly, no, you're not supposed to. Or at least the game is not trying to do anything to incentivize you doing that. I'm at a massive disadvantage for this boss fight. Wow. Might still be able to do it though. Raise your shield. Oh my god. That is something that I find incredibly frustrating about all this. Is that the shield, like if you get staggered, you basically have to wait for your character to fully be unstaggered or to roll out of the way or dodge or something like that, in order to reset your ability to then bring up your shield. But so that sounded like fucking what's his name? The guy from Wild Thornberries, Nigel Thornberry. That it's weird. But anyway, so now keeping in mind that we just you know, died after aggroing all the enemies in a really silly way while also getting poisoned. Let's see how this compares if we go through slowly, we take our time. Because another potential option or concern here is that we go through all of this, we take our time, but then just engaging with enemies means that we're using so much Estus, right? Because you're never going to engage with enemies perfectly unless you're extremely highly skilled. Here I got this guy over here that's like doing bleed damage to me and all that shit. And so maybe just like the cost, the expenditure in Estus and healing of going through and fighting meticulously is just too much. Maybe you just want to get to the boss fight as quickly as possible and you don't want to have to worry about all this shit along the way. And that's all potentially valid. Let's see if I have any other better options here. Dark defense, that might be useful later. One thing I can do, boost my equipment load, and then put on much better armor. Right, so Royal Swordsman gets me from 70 to 100. What else I got? Okay, I actually have on the better gloves. Gloves are good. Take out leggings. Drangleic leggings are actually the best that I have. I'm guessing Drangleic armor is going to be even better. I just get tired of wearing the same thing every single time. Here it is. Oh yeah, like holy shit. Incredibly good. So, I've also just given myself a massive like defensive boost, at least in terms of the numbers. Now this guy I don't actually have to fight. Oh, so I heard the sound, audio cue. Realized that there was something happening, decided to back off. Now the fact that I've cleared the way behind me means that I now have a much easier way of kind of beating a retreat. Okay, I still have to watch myself. Damn it, I'm really doing bad at stamina management. Okay. So that was really, really messy. And I can understand why, like, if you consistently have an experience like that, you're not gonna want to go through and have that experience over and over again just to get to the boss, especially if you're dying quickly at the boss. Now the counter to that is, and I don't mean this like in a pejorative way or anything, but to get good at fighting these enemies, you know, find a strategy that lets you deal with them effectively. So for example, if I don't rush through, if I fight it meticulously, how does this go? 1, 2, Okay, so he has a 3-attack combo. If I counter with my own 3-attack combo, then it's not particularly hard. So what about this guy? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4. So granted, I might be a little overtuned in terms of my weapon at this point. But notice how, like, okay, when I went carefully, I was able to kind of control the dynamic of the fight based on like how many people I was fighting at once. As opposed to if I were to run through, obviously, I would get attacked by multiple enemies simultaneously. I mean, it all seems very obvious, but for whatever reason, it just seems to be something that's contentious in the community, and or at least with certain reviewers. So I don't want to cast aspersions on everybody as a group. Hey, Konakun, how's it going? How are you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Just in the Huntsman's Copse right now, trying to make my way over to the Executioner's Chariot. Also talking a little bit about some of the reviews and commentary that I've heard on the game over the past couple of weeks. Very nice little detail here with the chains that are wrapped around the spires and the various bits of skeletons that are attached to it. Again, I don't know for sure if there's specific lore here other than the fact that the undead were hunted in this area and then brought into the arena to be tormented. And I think the horse that rides around in an endless loop that tramples on the bones of the dead, I think that's a reference to something in like a Buddhist hell. So I think that's an incorporation of that into this. But the bones and the stakes and all that is really cool. So I just heard a whoosh. Okay. So granted that, you know, that was an ambush. That was somebody coming from behind. But I heard the audio cue. And it's like, okay, something's up. Also, you would have seen that guy before, right? Like when we went up there, that was the same, there's the same area where those two bandits ambushed us before. We can see that. And that little guy was, the guy with the whip was up there waiting for us. So if we paid attention and looked at the environment coming up to this, we should have been able to see that the ambush was coming for us and prepare for it. We also had the audio cue that alerted us to it, so I don't think it was unfair. Konakun says, do you know why Sir Alan's floor is so shiny? Because he wiped the floor with everyone. Yes, I love it. I love it. That boss fight is so good. The run up to the boss fight is a little much, but the boss fight itself is really, really good. And the weapon that you get afterwards is great too. The lore behind Sir Alan as well, if I remember correctly, is pretty compelling too. There's just a lot going on there. But I like that. I haven't actually heard like a bespoke Dark Souls 2 joke in a long time, so that was great. I like that. Let me know if you got more. Okay, so let's see how much of a pain in the ass it is to deal with this guy. If we just engage with him normally. Okay, a little roll there. That was not insignificant, but also not that hard to find a backstab. Okay, I wasted my stamina there. I got myself into trouble. I wasn't watching my stamina. I think I should probably heal. No, it's too late. No. Oh my god. Okay. I gotta go. Okay, that was... I'm gonna focus for a minute here. Okay, so the thing is, I actually heard them coming. Oh, he just faded back. That was rude. I heard them coming along the rope bridge. And I was like, there's no way, right? Like, there's no way that they're going to throw this at me. But really important to just pay attention to the audio cues. Again, these guys themselves are not really all that threatening on their own. Can I get him before he... Yes, okay, good. Oh, that's right. This guy doesn't give you any souls. Okay, so I will admit that, like, everything that happened, I'm gonna wait for this until I beat the boss. Everything that happened there was a little excessive, you know, like, you have all of those basic enemies, including the enemy with the sickle that you have to deal with getting up here. Then you have that long gauntlet of enemies, and then you have this red phantom, and then the addition of that final enemy, or that final gank that kind of comes up to you. I do think it's entirely manageable. It's not unreasonable, but it is a lot, and it's like testing my patience a bit. I can understand why, if you don't really like the game or you don't like the game's combat, then it could feel like, okay, how much are you going to throw at me, right? Now, I don't remember if that red phantom respawns. If he respawns, then it's incredibly frustrating. If he doesn't, if you just kill him once, then I think it's okay, because now, by the time you've gone through this, you would have kind of mastered the sequence to a certain extent, and once you kind of get it down, it's not that bad, in my opinion. Konakun says the worst thing about Dark Souls 2 is someone making a 30-minute video about it and calling it bad and getting everything wrong. The only thing worse than that is someone 10 years ago making a video about it and calling it bad and getting everything wrong, and then someone else making a video that's like 90 minutes long and saying that it's actually pretty good, and then some other guy making 10 hours worth of videos saying, no, it's objectively bad, and you're not allowed legally or morally to like it because it's objectively bad. And then other people, years and years later, for no apparent reason that I can tell, jumping on to the train, so to speak, started by that 10-hour long sequence and continuing to perpetuate it. Look, I'll be honest. Dark Souls 2 is heavily flawed. It has a lot of problems, especially in the technical department. There are things that I find very frustrating and unsatisfying about it. And yet, as a game overall, I think it is incredibly strong, especially for its time. And the discourse around it is really oddly fraught, for whatever reason, with tension that I don't think is really warranted. I'm going to focus a little bit. I'm not really good with this boss, so I'm going to try to do my best to get through it, and we'll resume commentary. I'll probably still be talking, but I'll probably be like a little bit less focused. Trying to figure out if I want to use some healing. I don't think I need to use the monastery charms. I can use these because I don't care about spell uses, and then I'll keep the divine blessings just in case. Like, I don't super want to redo this fight. I'd rather just have it be a one and done thing. But if I can get there, but I think I'm gonna play it safe though. Okay. Could be right here. Okay. Oh, the fucking fuck off with the message, please. That message is such a troll. Heal, 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 heal. Okay, wow. Okay. So, I went to get my... I actually kind of respect that. That's actually kind of fucking hilarious. I went to get my... souls back, and the souls were right on top of where that message was, and as a result, when I went to press A to pick up my souls, I instead wound up reading the message, which got me stuck and brought those skeletons to me. So here's the thing. I don't like that boss fight because, and I think part of the reason why I find it frustrating, I'm grateful in a way because I think it helps me empathize with other people who just have a problem with the game overall, like in a larger sense. Because I feel when I engage with that boss fight that I am being like unfairly mobbed by enemies. I feel like anything I try to do is just going to result in me wind up like getting punished one way or another. If I hang around, I'm going to get punished because the enemies are all going to rush at me, or going to come at me one by one. They're going to keep respawning, and it's going to be annoying and boring. If I rush through, then they're going to swarm me. What? Why are they all swarming me now? What the fuck? Okay, that's weird. I don't... Do they always swarm you if you've been to the boss once? I don't understand. Although, actually, they kind of work to my advantage. Okay, that wasn't the end of the world. So, I guess, like, if we're talking about lessons, what the game is teaching you, that just taught me that even when you get overwhelmed, if you keep your cool and look for a tactically advantageous position, then you can probably turn the tides. I'm hearing some whooshing or something, making me suspicious. What is that? Okay. Oh, that's the other one that's patrolling. Also, here's a little friend up there. Now that I know he's coming, I can get the drop on him before he gets a drop on me. So, even if you wind up getting ambushed, if you remember the position of your ambushers, then you can reverse that onto them. It's subtle, but they use the same sound effect for the creeping of the ropes on the bridge as they do for the creaking of your bow, or an enemy's bow when they knock an arrow. And so I keep thinking that somebody is going to shoot me as I'm running across this bridge. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if they just had like a library sound that was like, play this when, you know, rope is creaking, and then they just reused it. But if it's if it was a deliberate choice, then it's kind of brilliant, because it's using a sound that you already know that kind of puts you on edge, and you know you're already in the state where you're looking for ambushes, and it adds to that a little bit. Oh hey, sorry, how's it going? Thank you very much for the nice message before. It's really nice to receive that. I'm going to go into the boss in a moment, so I might be a little distracted, but I'd be happy to hear about what you thought about the movie. And so far the stream is going really well. Just kind of taking our time as usual and leisurely talking about this particular level, the Huntsman's Copse. I probably didn't need to do that. It's probably a waste, but why not? I have plenty of human effigies and everything. This is not one of my favorite boss fights. It's also not one of the boss fights that I'm particularly good at, but I think it could still be fun to try a few different things. Okay. So, let's see. I'm going to be slightly focused now. And I'm going to try not to do the same thing I did last time. So I'm going to fight the skeletons, even though I know they're coming back. Okay. Here comes the chariot. Damage them. And I'm going to run out of stamina. That's okay. Back up a little bit. One. Okay, and then this guy too. Okay. So they're not dead, of course. Let's see. The chariot comes through. And if you defeat them in the middle of the area like that, then the chariot also tends to come back and hit them in that same spot when they're resurrected, right? So, actually makes sense to just slow down. And now I can get this guy, get him in 2 hits, I bet. And I think the skeletons... There's that troll message again that got me. Yes, I can't equip my shield because the message is in the way. Okay, there we go. That honestly is kind of hilarious, though. Okay, so now I'll take a moment and wait for the next one. So far, so good. Probably shouldn't actually be picking up those items. Okay, we got one over there. One coming down that way. Oh shit. Yeah, I think the hitbox on that is probably not fair. And there's probably too many, but I can just run forward, take refuge over here. Come on. It's actually fun, like the horse is going to help me. The boss itself is assisting me in its own defeat. That is kind of like darkly funny in its own way. I think I'm out of position. Oop. Just made it, okay. So, Also, listen to the music. It. Haha, nice. That's satisfying. Okay, so I think I'm actually almost done. That wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay. But you can hear the executioner actually going like, ha ha, like charging, egging it on, or spurring it on, not egging. Okay. Okay. We're gonna focus here. Alright. Let's see. Not too bad. I think he has like a breath attack that is more damaging. So far this is a bit clunky. Okay, alright. Get up, get up, get up. Heal, 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 heal. That could have ended badly. This is not ideal. Okay, we can do it though, we can do it. Alright. It's a little difficult to judge his charging because of... Oh, that's cool. Can I just blast through it? There we go. Okay, awesome. It's a little difficult to judge his charging, just because as he lowers his head, like the size of the hitbox on his head is not... It feels like a little bit bigger than the size of his heads, and so judging and timing the roll is difficult. And also he, like, it's kind of like a Margit thing, like in Elden Ring, where he holds his head down for so long, you're like, okay, he's gonna go now, he's gonna go now. Like if you've ever been at the at a red light waiting for it to turn green, you play that little game where you try to say now exactly when the light turns green. It kind of feels like that. But I just had this experience again where I played through this and I was really frustrated and I thought it was bad and I was about to talk shit, and then I figured it out, and now that I solved it, quote unquote, I actually feel really satisfied with it. I don't think it's a perfect fight at all. There's some major issues with it, but I'm still overall pretty satisfied with how that went down. I'm gonna take a look at comments though real quick. So Saria says, oh, it was cute. I love the movie. Great. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I'd heard some people had some pretty strong feelings about it. Jack Black was in it, right? Was he any good? I usually like him and stuff. Saria says, oh no, this boss. I got so tormented by this boss that I quit playing for a few weeks after the original release. I will say, yeah, there's no way for me to be totally unbiased, obviously, as I'm playing through. But I remember struggling with it greatly on my first playthrough, and then, or second playthrough, because I actually didn't find it on my first playthrough, but on my second playthrough, especially since I was a sorcerer, and I just couldn't like melt down those enemies fast enough, the necromancers, then I just like had no chance whatsoever. I got extremely frustrated, and had to come back much later. I will say though that, sorry, also says, I do think the horse looks cool, as annoying as it is to fight. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, thematically speaking, this, I wonder if this whole place was meant to be a bit of an homage to, I think his name is literally just Goat, or Got, from Majora's Mask, because it's a very similar situation where you have, an enemy who is running around in a circle, a big sort of animal-style enemy running around in a circle, and you have to manage your position around that arena and try and keep pace with the animal, while also navigating other hazards. Of course, this is a much sort of darker, grimmer rendition of that sort of thing, and it is kind of fun, or kind of a interesting that you're not like trying to race towards the horse or even like outpace the horse, but you're actively moving in the opposite direction towards it. So it kind of feels like you're fighting your way upstream, like against the current of a river or something like that. It is sort of odd that you're fighting, I think there's maybe two skeletons, there's at least one skeleton in the chariot who's actually driving them, and you don't actually engage with them really. Your fight is against the horse itself, which feels a little odd. But it's kind of a cool subversion because later on you fight like the skeleton lords, and the fact that this is called the Executioner's Chariot makes you think, oh, the real enemy is actually the mechanism that the enemy is riding on. That's the real threat, as opposed to the skeleton lord himself. It's an interesting, like, it feels like a little bit of a like an in joke almost, which is kind of cool. Um, just to talk about the mechanics of the boss fight, my initial strategy was to assume that what I was supposed to do was just run for the necromancers and kill them, because I thought the game was telling me, well, these enemies are respawning, so there's no point to you killing them over and over again. They're going to get resurrected. And when I tried to do that, I wound up getting eviscerated, obviously. But when I actually tried a different approach, literally not with any strategy or ingenuity in mind or anything like that, literally just curious, like, what if I try this differently? If I do the counterintuitive thing, then the whole thing got so much more manageable. And it's such a unique boss fight in that you actually wind up collaborating with the boss to spell its own doom, right? Like, you use the mechanics of the enemies who are attacking you, who I think narratively, like in the lore, should be hostile to the boss anyway, to then subvert the boss using the arena and the sub enemies. Usually when sub enemies are introduced in boss fights, I find that they're just like additional fodder, just there to weigh you down and waste your time and like drain your health. It's artificial difficulty, in my opinion, a majority of the time. This is one of those situations in which the way that you interact with the like bonus mobs actually gives you an advantage if you plan it right. So I like it. It's not my favorite fight. There's a lot of problems with it. I think the horses moves are kind of janky and animations are kind of janky. I also think that the sorry, I lost my train of thought. The horses moves are kind of janky, and also to have gone through, like, the boss fight itself isn't even the Executioner's Chariot. The boss fight is the entire run up to the boss fight, and then the chariot and the enemies in the arena, and then the horse. And so it's like, by the time you get to that third phase, effectively third phase, if that horse just like one shots you with that breath attack, it feels really annoying. I feel like any player who manages to go through and solve that puzzle and kill the necromancers and stuff is probably not going to want to do that twice. Dark Souls is not the sort of series where mid-boss checkpoints really make any sense, like in God of War. But this is one of those rare instances where I kind of feel like I wish when you pulled the lever, it sent the enemy down into like a chasm and like broke the upper arena, and then you could choose to follow it down to the chasm, and then the game would like push you down into the chasm, kind of like what happens with the Curse Rotted Greatwood in Dark Souls 3. But if you died, then you could just jump straight back into the chasm. You wouldn't have to do that whole thing again. Because I feel like the game is asking you to solve a puzzle, and then once you've done it, it shouldn't keep asking you to do the same thing over and over again. Just my opinion, though. Very nice, quiet, chill, beautiful area. I love the dust motes in the air over here. Now, I don't remember them looking like this in the vanilla version of the game. I'm gonna have to go back and check to see if I'm just misremembering. Something you might notice if you look really closely is that there are the particles themselves, like the little individual dust motes, are not individual like literal particles that are being rendered dynamically in the game engine. The game, unlike modern stuff like God of War, like I mentioned, or even other FromSoft games, there is not like little individual tiny things that are getting rendered one by one for each of the little flecks. It looks like there are flat textures with little with large regions of transparency, and then little flecks of white painted over the transparency, and there are several of those textures, and they're being overlaid and kind of moved and animated and looped throughout the area. You can kind of see, as I move the camera around, you can kind of like see the outlines of where some of them are. And on the one hand, that might seem, it might be tempting to kind of scoff at something like that and be like, oh, they couldn't even use real particles or whatever. But this game is like, what, 11 years old now? And I actually think this is a very clever visual trick and a very like it's something that doesn't require the invention of a new particle system. It's something that doesn't require a ton of resources on your CPU. So especially releasing this on like PS3 or something, this is a really smart way to try to simulate this visual effect without investing an inordinate amount of resources into it. And oftentimes, that is both the most fun part of game development and the most frustrating is that you have to kind of be like MacGyver about it and build like weird, janky solutions to problems because um, things don't necessarily like the stars don't align. You don't always get the resources. Pretty much every team is always wanting more of a resource budget and constantly being told you can't afford that, that's too expensive. It's not in terms of like the money invested in the game. I mean, like, there's not enough room in the CPU, there's not enough room in memory for this, and we have to find ways around it constantly. Very, very fun, but also very, very frustrating. And when I see people come up with intelligent solutions, creative solutions that retain the artistry, I think that's really impressive, honestly. So, I'm not going to get too much into the lore of this space, but it is really cool that they have an area that is specifically dedicated to PvP dueling. This character over here is a specific god in the pantheon. I think we talked about before that the congregation seems to be associated in Seldora, seems to be associated with Velka, but also Velka in Dark Souls 1 is associated with like judgment and sin and punishment. And so the presence of the scales over here kind of indicates that, okay, did Velka develop multiple aspects that people then worshipped in different ways? So there were people who worshipped the holier, more intelligent side of her, and then there were others that worshipped like the more brutal, vengeful side of her, and that kind of split off into two different deities that were kind of derived from the same thing. It's sort of hard to say. This could be an entirely new deity. It's not necessarily based on something from Dark Souls 1, but the imagery of the scales definitely is evocative. I like the fact that we've seen helmets like this with the sort of spiked mohawk as we've gone through this area, and this kind of seems to suggest a conflict between the believers in this god who's named Nar Alma and the possessors, like whatever faction was using that particular sort of armor. The scales being not balanced is also interesting. Again, I don't know for sure what the lore implications are, but the scales are not balanced, right? They are uneven. And I think the fact that this covenant is kind of encouraging you to go and kill other players and collect their blood, especially inside an arena that is specifically dedicated to just like torment hollows by killing them over and over and over again for no real purpose, just for the sadism of it, it kind of suggests that, Nar Alma is almost like beckoning to you, like, right the scales, balance the load by going and collecting more and more blood. But it's going to be a Sisyphean task. There's never going to be any end to it. You're going to be trapped in this cycle of purposeless killing over and over and over again. And this whole place, like, kind of reeks of that. So, a lot of storytelling, a lot of implications, a lot of intrigue that you can get just from looking at a statue, which is part of the reason why I love the story building, the environmental storytelling in these games so much. Saria says, I honestly appreciate little things like this because, sure, it might seem like lazy on the outside looking in, but there's still a lot of work that goes into these things, so I find it amazing. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've been working on games for a while now, and I'm still, like, every day, every time I go to work, obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so frequently I find that people are constantly coming up with, like, sometimes innovative, sometimes like challenging, sometimes just cute or weird or quirky ways of re-implementing things. It's a sort of thing that, or like addressing these challenges within limitations and constraints. It's a sort of thing where, on the one hand, though, like, the games industry, when I started working, was a little bit less structured, and it felt like not so many things had been figured out. And then way before I started working, like back in especially the PS2 era, but even before that, like back in the 90s, there were a lot of game companies that were still figuring out what it even meant to make a piece of digital art. And so there was just a lot of weird, quirky shit coming out, and there weren't very strict guidelines and standards for how to make game code because we were still figuring it out. And nowadays, more teams will have stricter guidelines for how things are supposed to be done. Like there's only like for whatever reason I've had to implement like footstep sounds in games for several projects. Like I've had to find the animations where characters are walking around, and I've had to find the material and the surface that they're walking on, and I found a way to get the game engine to play the right footstep sound for the right surface. So it plays metal sounds on metal, dirt on dirt, stuff like that, water sounds on water. And at this point, like, there's only so many ways you can do that, like, 30 years later. Not that I've been working for 30 years, just like, since whenever the first games that came out with footsteps that switched based on materials. There's only so many different ways you can do that, and eventually people figured out which ones are more performant and more worth doing, and so you're kind of expected to do it a certain way at this point. So there's always like this kind of trade-off between the spurts of creativity and ingenuity and like weird, crazy, maverick design, like off-the-wall design, versus following standards and practices and keeping to your quotas and what, like, however else to phrase it. Hopefully that made some sense. But the people that I'm always impressed and inspired by in the industry are those that can do both, that they can find very weird and unorthodox ways to do things that also like increase performance. It's it's some kind of weird wizardry. Yeah. Saria says, "Oh, yes, I agree with you." And Kona-kun says, "Yo, I'm back. Sorry, I had some work to do." Hey, no worries. I appreciate you stopping back. No worries at all. I understand people are probably going to stop by for a little bit and then go to do other things, maybe come back. Some people like to listen to the streams like a podcast and don't really talk much. Others prefer to chat a lot. And either way, however you want to engage with it, it's totally fine with me as long as you're having fun. Do you want to know about the Shisui saga? Yes, please share. Sorry about that. Yes, I would absolutely love to hear more about Shisui. Is this in relation to Sage's recent video like a couple weeks ago? I know we talked about it a little bit. But I'm gonna talk to this little guy over here. But please, please let me know your thoughts, and then I'll respond to them as soon as we're done. I will. Damn it! Whenever I start coughing, it takes me a minute to get through it. Sorry about that. But this little guy over here, interesting in that it also, his stature, his appearance, does feel like it fits into that fairy tale aesthetic that we saw previously with the characters in the Belfry. But obviously now we're taking the slightly whimsical, almost jolly but manic design, and we're totally subverting it into something that is bloody, almost edgy, almost like horror themed. And there's a lot of little details on his outfit, like the hook to his hat, the fact that his arms are bandaged, the darker coloration of his skin, but then also like those talons, with the point of his hat combined with those whatever they are, talons or wing, what's the term for the, not the cartilage, but like the bones in the wings of bats. I forget the specific term for them, but that's what it kind of looks like, right? It looks like the interconnecting, like the phalanges or whatever of a bat wing minus the wing. So very, very interesting and cool character design. I really, really love this character design. I understand that some folks might feel that it doesn't fit into Dark Souls or feel very Dark Souls, in the way that like the Naboo fighters. This is a weird analogy, but like when the Phantom Menace came out, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, I think a lot of people felt like the aesthetics of Naboo just somehow weren't Star Wars. They didn't quite fit, and I would agree with that. And then also, I really like the design of the like silver Naboo starfighters. So similarly here, this guy doesn't really feel Dark Souls to me. He feels like he kind of wandered in from another game, and also I really like his design. So hopefully that made some sense. Konakun says, "Know my story on how I became a Shisui hater." Oh, I don't think I've heard that one. No, please, I do. I do want to hear about it. I think I have a guess as to maybe why, but I'm not gonna say it, and I'll keep it keep it as a secret, and then we'll see if my guess is correct. But please let me know what you think.
What is it? Oh, you trot along now. This place won't be any fun. Not for you.
One second. just... Okay.
What is it? Oh, you trot long now. This place won't be any fun. Not for you.
It's actually kind of hard to make out his individual digits, which makes me wonder about his fingers as well. So I think that this could possibly be frustrating for a player to kind of come through all this and be expecting some reward, and then wind up in this area that looks genuinely really terrifying, but in a fun way, and then be told, hey, fuck you, you don't belong here. And that is something that I can sympathize with, but at the same time, I think the idea that, like, your character is on a certain path, and that path is determined by your actions, and those actions will lead to distinct changes in how the world sees you and responds to you, it feels very RPG. It's one of the few things that this game does that genuinely feels like an RPG in the traditional sense of the word. And just finding these obscure things that may or may not be aligned with your character, and then wondering about them later on, and finding ways to kind of come back and check them again, or engage with them, or discover them again, I think is like a very Dark Souls-ian thing to do. It just feels like a quintessential part of the experience. Not to mention that you can actually sort of trick him into letting him join your covenant. Basically, later on in the game, not too later, like you can go down to the gutter and get there in like 2 or 3 hours, but you can find an item, which is basically he wants you to show that you've invaded and killed another player before he lets you join the covenant and participate with the mechanics there. And in order to do that, you need to prove that you've used like a cracked red eye orb to invade somebody and kill them and get their token of spite, I think it's called. But later on in the game, you can also just find a token of spite, and if you bring it to him, like in a chest, like playing offline, if you find it and bring it to him, he'll be like, oh, looks like you totally killed someone. That's fine, good enough for me. Kind of like Vare in Elden Ring, where like he's like, you need to kill a maiden to join the club, and then you just like go find a maiden that's already dead, and you get her blood, and you bring it back, and he's like, oh, blood of a maiden, yeah, that's fine, I don't need to ask any questions, you're good. So it's cool. I think that whole narrative that emerges is charming in its own way. Let me catch up on chat here. So in 2019, before I watched Naruto, I was in a Discord server, and everything about Naruto was spoiled for me. Oh, that sucks. That really sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. And everyone in that server was hyping up a character called Shisui. Although, yeah, so much of... There are so many moments in the story that are really not only effective, I guess, if you experience them in real time, but definitely most effective. Like Obito's... There's nothing... Even if you just pick up the story and start reading today from brand new, there's nothing that quite beats the feeling of or that can quite replicate what it felt like to have been waiting for the Obito reveal for years, and then to experience it along with everybody else, like in real time when that issue came out and everybody was talking about it. But even so, like being able to read through the series at your own pace and come to your own conclusions, make your own guesses, and then see if you were right, like that's a really cool thing. And to have that be subverted for you, I don't know if that happened for you with Obito specifically, but either way, you know, it's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that you had things spoiled. That's never fun. I think, before I forget, I wanted to put some more points into endurance for some more stamina. Oh, and I need some more vitality for sure, so let's do that. Okay. Saria says, one of my favorite things with Dark Souls 2 is the distinct architectural and cultural styles in the game's story, showing how there's so much history in the world. Yes, absolutely. They use their assets perfectly. I totally agree. That's a really good point. I haven't talked all that much about that. I don't have necessarily a great eye for it, but someplace like Hade's Tower of Flame versus the Iron Keep, you can definitely see that the difference in architecture reflects both the style of the aesthetic sensibilities of the people who lived there diegetically, but also the function of the keep. You know, Iron Keep is specifically oriented around a character who's obsessed with raw strength and power, whereas Hyde has more of a nobler tradition, or Hyde has more of a tradition of nobility and knights and like a sacred order. Granted that the order seems to have been corrupted, but it also might be connected to Anor Londo, so there's something that feels a little bit more regal about it. You know, you have the beautiful stained glass windows, whereas in the Iron Keep you have more like statuary and imagery of like angels and monks and shit like that, and of course like all of the iron everywhere. So I couldn't tell you like this column over here is a Doric column and this one over here is a Gothic arch. Like, I don't know any of that shit, but I just intuitively agree that the spaces feel like they're always telling a part of the story themselves, and not to mention that they do reuse assets in certain cases, but they also go out of their way to really define like a visual language for every space. Or every region, every biome, I guess. Returning to Konakun's comments, Konakun says, so when I started Naruto, the character I was most excited about was Shisui, but then the first thing, oh, I see, because of the hype in the server, but then the first thing we learned about him is that he died off screen, and that caught me off guard. Yep, that makes sense. Everyone was hyping him up, he died off screen, and then you know how Shisui versus Danzo went in the anime, right. So after that, I was so disappointed, I got so pissed, and when I told people in the server that I hate Shisui, people called me stupid. Now that sucks, I'm sorry. I've been on the receiving end of that too, and it really feels bad. This guy got no diffed by Danzo, and you're calling me stupid, so then I became the biggest Shisui hater. That sounds miserable. Like, I'm sorry to hear that happened, that's really not fun. I mean, I can understand having characters that you prefer as a member of a community, and even characters that you hate, but having somebody join your community and be interested in the topic, and then rather than letting them have the opportunity to experience the character's arc on their own, you give them an extremely like limited and colored view of that, and then you get mad at them when they have a different experience from you. Yeah, it feels like they were kind of biased and unfair and expected you to have a very specific viewpoint, and then when you didn't, they weren't willing to give you the space to have that differing viewpoint, which to me just feels like not nice. So I'm sorry to hear that. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is that I have a similar, like, not the same thing, but I have a similar experience about Kimimaro, in that he's or actually a character that I bet you probably feel similarly about this. I'd be curious if you would agree, that I have started to feel the same way about Itachi, because there's this attitude about Itachi that he's such this great prodigy, and he's, you know, in a class of his own, and we've never seen him at full power because he was always sick. So people talk about Itachi as basically a god that can shake the foundations of the universe. And then, like, I don't know, that maybe he is like way more powerful when he's not sick. That's probably reasonable, but the way he's portrayed as by some people is almost as if he's like an Otsutsuki himself. Like, he's basically like, just, if he weren't sick, he would be standing above the universe in complete like dominance and control of everything. And I don't know, I feel like looking at him that way removes a little bit of the intrigue and the like complexity of his character. Characters are allowed to be vulnerable and be cool at the same time. Characters are allowed to have flaws and limitations and also really be really cool despite those. It seems like there's a very specific version of cool and compelling that is being assumed to be necessary, if that makes sense. Anyway, curious if you have any hot Itachi takes. Saria says, it's why I don't take part in most discussions, even Sage's server. Oh, 1 second. I think there's... Oh, I thought I heard coyotes howling outside. I was like, what the hell's going on? I think it's just the wind in the game. Yeah, it's the wind. Okay, sorry about that. Saria says, it's why I don't take part in most discussions, even Sage's server. As much as I love those guys, it's not a very safe space. It's negative. It's very negative, and like it thrives in it instead of making it better. Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that there's sort of two I haven't been in the server very long, and so I don't want to comment too much. I don't think it's really my place to say what's like right or wrong or whatever. But just as a newcomer, I can say that subjectively, I've seen sort of two different types of conversations happening. One is like just people hanging out and enjoying each other's company and like saying little things and maybe having like light disagreements, but for the most part, just kind of goofing off. And can I do this? Please don't die. Please don't die. Okay, there we go. And then the other one is just like very quick, rapid escalation of somebody says something deliberately provocative. Oh my god, my heart jumped up into my throat. And then it just like quickly descends into chaos. Of like, I can't believe you said that. That's cap. That's a trash take. Get in VC and right now, coward. Like, step up. Like, you can't really believe that. Just like, it's really intense, really fast. And this is just between us. Well, I guess it's on the internet. It's between anybody who wants to listen. But I have a theory that there are a couple of people who are recent additions who have shown up, that whose names might not actually be like their actual names, and who showed up coincidentally around certain times and seem to have basically created a new account and shown up and not engaged in any of the nicer discussions and just started to talk shit and try to like get Sage specifically upset and get him to debate or whatever. And so what I've learned, at least I think I've learned, is that there is a culture around Naruto debating that is specifically like the point is to fight people. It doesn't really matter who the characters are. It doesn't really matter what the arguments are. It doesn't even really matter who you're fighting. Not really. It just matters that you get somebody to compete with you, and then once you're in the ring, you use whatever means necessary to quote-unquote win that fight. The win condition is just being there and humiliating your opponent or whatever, however you want to define victory. And that to me gets like really crazy. And I guess there are, if it was about like debates about UFC or something like that, then I could kind of understand it. But Naruto is a series with a lot of fights in it, but it's almost like not even really about the fighting as much as it is about what the fights represent and how the fights reflect characters' ideals and the conflicting ideologies in the world. And as far as I can tell, one of the main ideologies of Naruto is that hatred and pain lead to cycles of suffering that are self-perpetuating, and that at the end of the day, the root of all of the world's problems lies in a cycle. And unless we actively agree to help each other break free of the cycle by trying to understand each other, then that will always continue to be the case. And one of the big themes of it is how do we understand, confront, and change that cycle. And so it's always deeply ironic to me. Like, have the competition, have the debate if you want, but then like going after people and harassing them and like stalking them and like screaming at them and whatever else goes on. Not on Sage's server specifically. I'm talking about certain other events in the community. But all of the abuse and bullying and stuff that comes out of that, it's like you guys really did not pay attention to the story at all. You really did not either comprehend or vibe with any of the messages that Kishimoto was trying to convey. It's just really, really weird. Anyway, sorry, I kind of went off on a rant there. Clearly I have experienced some of the stuff and feel unfortunate about it, especially since I think it's such a wonderful series, and it could be like, as fans of it, like we should be trying to bring more people in and encourage them to enjoy it in their own way. But there seems to be this mentality that there is an established way to enjoy it, and you either do that or get the fuck out. Anyway, I'll start fucking rambling. Konakun says Dark Souls 1 Balls of the Abyss, Dark Souls 2 Balls of the Sunken King, Dark Souls 3 Balls of Oriental. It's all just balls. So Elden Ring, where do the balls come in Elden Ring or in Bloodborne? I have to know. I have to know how the saga of the balls continues. Please don't stop. Oh yes, the Dark Souls. Please don't dry dops. Yes, exactly. The tension. I like felt my body clenching. It's like no, no, no. Konakun says I like Itachi, but his fans, oh boy, I want to stay away from them as far as possible. Also, we did see a full power Itachi, Edo Itachi. Oh yeah, that's fair. I think there's an argument that some people have made that the Edo Tensei versions of characters are just inherently weaker. I happen to not agree with that. At least it depends. In my opinion, it depends a lot on which character we're talking about under which circumstances. But yeah, if you consider that to be full power Itachi, I wouldn't disagree with you necessarily. So let's see. Sorry, Konakun says, why does people only do power scaling on Naruto? Why not do an analysis on themes and characters so people can understand that hard work beats talent is not a theme of Naruto? Yeah, exactly. That's a theme that shows up and is part of it, but is not the theme, not the only theme. So I'm going to talk to Crichton real quick just to advance his plot, but I'm going to keep reading as well.
I thought you were that bastard for a moment.
I love his voice.
You've set me free. Now I can find him. The cheeky prick. He won't know what hit him. I am Creighton of Mirror. I travel from land to land to hone my blade. I've heard this land was full of danger. I thought it would suit me perfectly. I joined forces with a man on the way, but he was no more than a backstabbing knave. He took the first chance he had to try and off me. I decided to set a trap for him here. But then I got trapped myself. I can't believe that I was so dense. Thank the stars that you came along. You be careful of him.
Pete.
Pate, I think he said. He wears this rather unusual ring. You know it when you see it. I've seen his type before. He kills entirely for the pleasure of it. I'm sure I won't be his last victim. The man's better off dead. I tell ya. He's a slick talker, so don't let him fool ya. Pate, the man with and don't you believe I'll find a common footbed and put an end to his roguery.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about his dialogue in just a second, but I'll catch up on chat real quick. Oh, hey, Saya Busters, or is it Sia Busters? Nice to see you. Thank you very much for stopping by the stream. Hope you're doing well. How's everything going on your end? It says watching Dark Souls 2 stream while playing Dark Souls 2. I know, it's I do the same thing too. Sometimes as I'm going through games, I'll like have a lore, a quote unquote podcast or something going in my headphones while playing. It's really nice to have that experience. Especially like if you're already familiar with it and you're just playing like a chill playthrough. I really like listening to lore podcasts by like Sinclair Lore is one of my favorite channels as I'm playing through the Souls games. So I hope you enjoy the stream. If there's anything you'd like to talk about or anything you want me to kind of delve into that you're curious about or want to share, please feel free. Konakun says, why does people only do power scaling on Naruto? Oh yeah. Oh, that's right, Konakun. I would highly recommend that you check out a channel called Sage's Reign. Sage's Reign is great, and he does some really interesting like narrative and thematic analyses that I think you might enjoy. There's also a video, I can't remember the name of the author or the video creator. There's a video called In Defense of Talk no Jutsu, and I think there's like 2 or 3 videos in that series, and he basically talks about all the times that Naruto used Talk no Jutsu or tried to, and when he was successful at talking people down and changing their minds, and why it worked and why it didn't, and like what the philosophy was behind that. I have one in my watch later queue that I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the creator, but there's somebody who did a video. I think if you look like Datara versus sorcery, conflicting philosophies, there's a video kind of examining the artistic and aesthetic differences between those characters. So there are people out there that are doing that sort of thing. Even like Swag Kage, who I sometimes disagree with, when he came back from from cryosleep, the first video that he made was, you know, Naruto was always the underdog, and that's like a long analysis of whether or not Naruto was some sort of a, how can I say? I think it was largely in response to that old Plague of Gripes video, and it was trying to emphasize, like, talk more about Naruto's journey and his progression, and argue that his power was earned and not just like some hack that he didn't deserve or something like that. So there are people out there that are doing that content. It's just for whatever reason, the algorithm and certain parts of the community are not promoting it as much anymore. Saria says, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting to comments out of order. Saria says it's lame, but that's why I enjoy hearing you talk. Well, it's not lame. Like, even here with Dark Souls, you don't break things down to its simplest forms, appreciate and criticize it in ways that I want to discuss. That's really wonderful, and I really appreciate that. That's what I want to hear, you know. I used to be very focused in my critiques on things that I thought were objectively broken, and it was kind of miserable because all I was doing was like scanning through things looking for all the problems, and I never really had any fun talking about it. And then there was probably one channel that changed things very intensely for me, and should put these links somewhere to help people find them, but there were two channels that really kind of changed the way that I looked at things, and one was Joseph Anderson, and the other one was Noah Caldwell Gervais. And Noah Caldwell Gervais is probably my favorite like game critique analyst type person, but also just in general one of my favorite like media commentator type of people, because like he is what I would aspire to be in terms of like overall like quality and insight and stuff like that, because he always tries to analyze like all parts of the game from artistry to technical stuff, and he also tries to put things into a greater like narrative framework and context, or cultural framework and context. So he's not just talking about the game in and of itself, but about how it like fits into the ongoing discussion about video games and to culture and society at a given time. And he's always like, he'll call out shit he doesn't like. He's not sanitized or incapable of having a spicy opinion, but the way in which he presents it is always as like fair, basically, and seems to be a part of that larger discussion. So that's what I find inspiring. That's what has helped me. Finding videos like that helped me move out of a place of cynicism, where I wasn't really enjoying anything, and start to see things in a more enjoyable light. And so if all I accomplish with this channel is that I can try to like parrot that style of conversation and encourage more people to like see his stuff and to think about things in a similar way, then I'll be really, really happy, because it's definitely like made things better for me. So I will catch up on the rest of chat too. I'm sorry, I'm just like focused on the fight. I do think that this fight is, so this is a perfect example. People talking about how like Dark Souls 2 is not designed to handle multiple enemies and multi-boss encounters and stuff like that, that I obviously strongly disagree with. But also, I'm just going to shut up and let the music play for a second. Like, listen to the music in the background. It's kind of hard to hear. At some point in the near future, I'm going to do a stream talking specifically about the music in the game. Because in one critique of the game, I heard somebody say, like, all the music just sounds like Ornstein and Smo from the first game, and I don't know, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff going on in the soundtrack. I don't know if you could hear it there, but there's, like, their strings and harpsichord, and the way that they're kind of staggered. There's like groups of 3 notes that are overlaid with groups of 4 notes. So you hear like what can I say? It's like 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 like that, right? And I think it kind of helps to reinforce the fact, like, the idea of these bosses being like these 3 individual pillars, but then disintegrating and becoming hordes in and of themselves. I think is being kind of, that story is being told by the music as it sort of like breaks apart onto itself. It's really, really cool. And again, like, I'm no like music scholar or whatever, it's just how it sounds to me, right? Anyway, let me get away from the loud water sound. I'm sure that's not all that much fun to listen to, and then I'll catch up on chat. So again, Saria, thank you. Is it Saria, by the way? Is that okay? I was just assuming that it was like Saria's Epona. If I'm not saying it right, please let me know. But that's exactly what I was hoping for when I started streaming. So I'm very appreciative for the feedback, and hopefully I can live up to that in the long term. And then see ya busters. I'll try to remember that as well. Let's see, what else did I miss here? You set me so free. Now I'm going to fight, even though I was silly enough to get trapped by a trap that I've set. Maybe just chill for all. Yeah, maybe just like, reevaluate if the whole like adventurer, marauder, bandit thing is right for you. Maybe there's something else you should be doing with your time. Konakun says Bloodborne, the sick balls dice twice. Othering balls of the Ur tree. It's perfect. All these games are just perfect for balls. I can't see anything wrong with that at all. So yeah, Busters, I'm currently playing the modded version of Dark Souls 2, Bearer of the Curse Edition. Interesting. So is that a mod to the vanilla version, or is that a mod to is there a skull in the tree? Is that a mod to the vanilla version, or to Scholar of the First Sin? I'd be curious to hear more about it. By the way, have you tried Garden of Eyes for Elden Ring, I think? I haven't tried it yet, but for some reason my feed recently has just been filled with all of these videos about like Garden of Eyes is a scam, Garden of Eyes, like people are really upset about it for whatever reason, and I would be curious if you know what the hell is going on. As far as I know, it's an entirely free mod. I guess the skull doesn't have any collision on it. Weird. Let's see. Oh yeah, we left out Armored Core. Konakun, I'm guessing you're gonna say Armored Balls. Or would you say Balmored Core or something like that? Saria says the Plague of Gripes video is insane because people take it as law when he says in the start of the video he's never read Naruto before. Yeah, exactly. Like, I clicked on that video and he literally said, I don't know much about Naruto, let's talk about it, and I immediately closed it. And then I thought I was being unfair, and so I came back later and I was like, okay, I'll try it, and there are some valid and interesting points in the first 10 minutes, kind of, but mostly it just comes across as like, I don't really care about this, and I'm not like going to try to understand it particularly deeply. Instead, anytime I come across something that I don't like or that confuses me, I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. Why did this happen this way? This doesn't make any sense. Not try to answer it and then just like get mad and disengage with it. But honestly, like, that was okay. I could deal with that and, talk about that. But there was a certain point, maybe around the 12 or 15 minute mark. It was a few months ago I looked at it. And he just started saying things about, I think, Hinata or another character who was definitely, yeah, maybe it was like Hinata versus Neji, just making so weird, like, edgy, like comments about breeding Hinata or something like that. And, like, I don't want to hear, like, a grown-ass man talk about a young girl in this way. It's very fucking uncomfortable and not cool. And just, without like weird shit like that, I might have been able to get through it, but there was just a certain point where I was like, okay, like this might have been funny when I was like 16 and like hated everything, but I can't deal with that anymore. So Saria's opponent's like, yeah, it's like Saria from Ocarina of Time, like Saria's opponent. Yes. Okay, good. That's what I thought. I like to check. So, I guess before I delve into this area, I'll just say that I find the progression. I know a lot of people talk about how the progression from this area to the next feels a little bit excessive, or a little bit unreal. What's the word for it? A little bit unbelievable, a little bit immersion breaking, or something like that. And that's fair. I don't think anybody is compelled to like those transitions, and it does feel a little bit awkward. But I will say that the introduction to this area, coming from a very dark, grim, dismal location, to see this area that looks kind of like a castle, but almost like a factory as well, with all of the windmills jutting out and going at different rates, at different angles, and everything, it feels very alive and very animated while also feeling dead at the same time. It feels like the building itself is a zombie. It feels like the building itself is a reanimated corpse. And it's just so visually distinct that I can't help but be kind of in awe at what they achieved, at least from an overall presentation standpoint. The level itself is actually very well designed, I think. It's a bit annoying, it's a bit gimmicky at times, but still, like, very, very intriguing sort of area that feels like it has its own voice in the series, own distinct voice in the series. Not to mention also that of all of the levels from Dark Souls 2 that they could have brought back as a reference in Dark Souls 3, they picked this area. And I think it baffled a lot of people, myself included. But now when I think about it, it is an area that has a lot of emotion, of narrative significance. It's an area that has a lot of sort of unique history and lore to it. And just visually speaking, it's very striking. Not to mention, actually, this is what I was going to do, is that the enemies here too. I mean, I know people say that the game has a lot of dudes in armor, and that makes the game boring because the presentation is just focused on that particular enemy type. But there are also these creatures here. I thought I could zoom in because I can't. That, like, there's like this big ogre with a mask covering its face that throws masses of like dark pyromancy at you, and then like a little guy riding his back. I don't know, that again, that feels sort of fairy tale-ish, maybe feels a little bit too cartoonish for something like Dark Souls. So if you don't vibe with the aesthetic, that's totally fine. But I also feel like it's very cool and distinct, like, enemy design, right? It's quirky, it's something new, and there's enough enemy design like that I don't feel like the armored knight archetype is the majority at all. Some of the bosses, sure, but it's not the majority. Let me check chat real quick. This is the reason why I don't take Six's opinion on Bleach seriously, says Konakun, because bro has read Bleach once and everything he remembers from his vague memory. Yeah, like, I think that's a little unfortunate. My interactions with Six and his server and all that seemed to be pretty knowledgeable about Naruto, seemed to be able to pull from a lot of different sources, but it was a weird disconnect because whenever I talked to Six directly, it seemed like he seemed super knowledgeable and he seemed like super able to get references and answer questions very quickly, which I respected. I still do. But then also, like, in debates, the tone changes very quickly, and that doesn't seem to be the case, and I never quite understood the disconnect between those two things. My favorite moment in all the time, says Konakun, in all of anime, sorry, is from Lucky Star when Kagami was dreaming about Konata and said, I want to... Oh, I'm guessing that there's a reason why that was starred out. I'm going to have to probably look into that off stream. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I remember, I think we talked about it last time. I remember the opening theme being really cool, and then the first two episodes being really cute as well. Wasn't there like an extended plot point for like half the episode about them like trying to get the right ice cream flavor or lunch or something like that? I just remember like adorable antics about some sort of snack food, but I don't, unfortunately, for better or for worse, I don't exactly know what you're referring to. Saria says, I'm probably biased because of Dark Nuts from Zelda, but guys in armor is so cool to me. Yeah, I mean, like, armor design is an excellent opportunity for storytelling and for character, like, depicting things about a character. And fighting one-on-one bouts against armored enemies can be a lot of fun. I think, just my opinion, like, I have to go back and read, like listen to people's opinions and make sure I'm not misrepresenting them. But a through line for me seemed to be that like the what the fuck is that guy called? The Dragon Rider Knight, outside of like in Hade's Tower of Flame, was sort of the exemplar of like there are too many things like this in the game. There's a guy in armor, he's slow and dumb, he makes slow, big sweeping attacks with his big weapon, and he doesn't have very many attacks, so it's just boring. And there are quite a few, and I think that because of that, it kind of sours people's overall taste, and I think there's a bit of negativity bias where it's like, okay, yeah, the Covetous Demon looks different, the Demon of Song looks different, the Guardian Dragon looks different, etc., etc. Those guys aren't dudes in armor. Mitha, what's her name? The Scorpion lady, whose name I'm blanking on, Najka, the Rotten. There's a lot of guys out there a lot of bosses, excuse me, a lot of guys out there, a lot of bosses who don't have the slow dude in armor knight archetype. But because the few of them that do exist kind of sour the mood, and then a lot of those other bosses are relatively simple, not big spectacles, pretty easily dealt with, like the Covetous Demon, for example. I think they tend to forget about those and just focus on the ones that are a bit more annoying, and that's normal. That's like a normal human impulse, and it doesn't mean that they're wrong about their critique about those things either. But I do think it's a bit unfair.
Are you a traveller? I'm Chloanne.
The Dark Nuts are awesome
also a
enemies
trader.
too.
I travel about collecting rare stones, which I sell to make my living. I never planned to visit this god's forsaken place. But I don't know. I just sort of ended up here. I must have just wandered in. But now that I'm here, I've been scouting around for rare bits. Oh, don't look at me like that. Many of these stones are quite useful. For instance, certain stones are used in smithing. Oh, now your ears prick up. I've extras if you can pay. This is my trade, after all.
So, this character over here, just to confirm, Saria, the Dark Nut in Ocarina of Time is the enemy that you fight in the Spirit Temple that has like the big double-bladed axe and is like cutting down the columns, right? If so, that's one of my favorite like fights in that whole game. I love that encounter. Konakun says I have a very, very bad habit of starting a series and then starting another series before finishing the first. Well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with a bit of variety. Curious why you think it's a bad habit. Do you just find that it's like hard to kind of stick with a series and make progress? But yeah, like, are you just kind of getting bored with them and wanting to proceed, or losing interest, or is it more that you just get distracted by the next shiny object, so to speak? So I don't know what to say about Chloanne. She's another one of those characters that feels like a little bit out of place, and I'm not exactly sure what to say one way or another. But let's just look for see if we can find any interesting details. So she is wearing what appears to be a hybrid between a corset and like a blacksmith's apron, or just an apron in general, I suppose. From the front, it looks like her outfit could be worn by a blacksmith or the like, and there's a little pouch there for goods or for tools or something like that. But then from behind, I gotta get the camera right, you can see that there is actually a lace corset. Now maybe that's entirely common. I don't spend a lot of time studying women's attire, but to me this seems like maybe it's trying to do some sort of commentary on like a dual nature aspect of her. Like she has this more like traditionally feminine side and then a more traditionally masculine side with the like working in the forge or with stones or whatever, but then also I don't even know if I want to say traditionally feminine. I should say more like demure or elegant or something like that, right? And then that's of course covering like a more elegant dress underneath that. That's not maybe something that you would wear in a forge. You later go on to discover that she's the daughter of Lenegrast, who is the smith in Majula. And so it kind of makes sense that like her father's complaining about how she's always wandering around, like traipsing around the world, and she should take things more seriously. So now we have this potentially, if my interpretation is correct, reinforced in her visual design, where part of her design is a, you know, you ever heard the expression like business in front, party in back, something like that? You know, with people having a mullet haircut where the front is tidy and the back is all kind of messy. It kind of seems like what she's going for here with her dress as well. And if you look closely, I didn't notice this before, you can see it almost looks like she has a ridge of hair on the back that's been shaved, and a part of her hair that is shorter, and then of course you have the long plume, and that plume as well looks very regal. It almost looks like, I don't think this is a direct reference, more just like in terms of overall aesthetics, it almost looks like a feather or something like that. So you have aspects of her which seem to be a bit more professional and rough and tumble, and aspects that are a bit more casual and elegant. You have aspects that feel like they have, you know, there's a contrast in different hairstyles that are kind of overlapping and clashing with one another. And then on her arm, I don't know what that represents, to be honest. But it's interesting. It's very prominently displayed. So very interesting character design. Also, the obvious thing that she's sort of slowly stroking the skull is very odd, and the fact that she doesn't seem to comment on it or realize what it is. But you're in an area with a bunch of skeletons, some of which are posed in these odd positions and seem to be very expressive and almost cute in their own way. Combine all of that with the fact that the way that she's kind of described things, everybody else that you meet says something along the lines of, I had a specific reason for coming here, and then I got here. Yeah, see, more like kind of funny skeletons. I had a specific reason for coming here, but then I got here and I totally forgot what the reason was, and that sucks, and I wished I could remember it. Whereas she was like, oh yeah, I didn't really have any reason to come here. I just fucking showed up. And then I realized there were all these stones and bones everywhere. Like, fuck yeah, I love both of those things. And has found her purpose here in a very kind of simple and mundane task, but still something that she finds a purpose in. Now, she might be confused. I kind of like the idea that she actually thinks that her... one second. That she actually thinks the things that she's... Oh my god. Wow. Wasn't expecting that. That she thinks the shit that she's finding are actual stones. Like, they're actually meant to be used in smithing, but they're actually just bones, and it just turns out that you're capable of using them for whatever weird reason. But I might be reading too much into it. I don't know if this skull is supposed to be a reference to something. Anyway. Oh yeah, I gotta catch up. Sorry. Konokun says, I started a series called Golden Kamui. Oh, I've heard of that, yeah. I read it until volume 2, then started reading a series called Bloom Into You, and then I started watching Lucky Star, and I haven't finished any of them, and now I'm reading Chainsaw Man. Ooh, Chainsaw Man's a good choice, though. Chainsaw Man's great. Yeah, that's okay. I guess it sounds like you're just kind of, looking around for something that you vibe and connect with. That's totally fine. I hope you find something that you find enjoyable. Sometimes I'll go through phases where I play games like that. Like, I'll just get games on sale or on Game Pass or whatever, and I'll just play like an hour of a game and then move on to the next one. There are definitely games where I can like sink hundreds of hours into, but I, am not always looking for that. Sometimes and that doesn't always mean that there's anything wrong with the series or the game either. It's just like I'm kind of more in the mood for to not get like super incredibly deep into something. Just want to enjoy it a little bit and then move on to the next thing. Oh, Saria says that's the Iron Knuckle in Ocarina of Time. Okay, my bad. The Dark Knights are in Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. They're essentially cursed members from... Oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yep, sorry, I get confused. I like those too. Oh, I actually had a, something I wanted to ask you about, given that you are a lore aficionado of Zelda stuff, um, assuming you've played Twilight Princess, the I haven't played it in a long time, but I seem to remember there's a character that Link would go to fight to learn new sword techniques, and it was like a skeleton sword master and a guy. You would have to, I think, play the Song of Healing, like Howl the Song of Healing with the wolf in wolf form, something like that. I think I remember there being some fan theory indicating that that was actually a previous incarnation of Link, like it was Link from Ocarina of Time or something like that. Do you agree with that theory? Do you know if that's something that's just like headcanon, or has it kind of been accepted by the community at large? Sorry also says, also, do you mind if I share a clip from the stream to some friends? I clipped you saying I'm trying to make sure I'm not misrepresenting people's arguments because more people need this mindset. Yes, please. I'd be more than happy to. I thank you for asking. It's really considerate of you. But I kind of figured that anything that I put out online is going to be, publicly available anyway. So, and I'd be more than happy to have it shared with other people. So please feel free. Konakun says, in the final fight of Elden Ring, Ranni should have hopped on her back. It would have been called the Tarnished Consort of Radani. Yes. Or, sorry, the Tarnished Consort of Ranni, not Radani. Although I do like Radani. Imagine, like, Radahn with, like, teaming up with Ranni. It'd be an unstoppable force. But, yeah, I wonder why Ranni didn't get any presence in the DLC, unless she did, and I just blanked on it. Like, they gave more lore. I guess they did give us some stuff, like, tangentially via Rolana and via, like, Metyr and all that stuff. But, yeah. Zarya says, oh, yes, that was Ocarina Link. Yes, that's kind of... Oh, okay, awesome. That's so cool. I remember vaguely hearing about it, but, or, like, I had a vague memory of it, but I couldn't recall if it was actually, like, something that had been accepted. I'm avoiding the poison pool for now because it's something that, like, I have to go gear up for, I think, and get, like, some more poison resistance and some, whatchamacallit, some life gems. I just want to take a second and listen to the audio. So I'm a pretty big fan of the way that they implemented the audio for the windmills themselves. It really makes, it's like a really kind of intense and oppressive feeling, and it makes you feel like the windmills are pressing down on you from all sides. The sound effects themselves have a lot of bass to them, which I think gives them a lot of weight and presence and makes it feel like, I don't know, it's almost like a little maddening if you listen to it for an extended period of time. Especially if you are somebody who's been subjugated and forced to work here, having the constant, never-ending, like, sound of those things just constantly churning away is something that I think would, like, serve to further drive you insane. So, this area as well is kind of interesting in that it's it kind of reminds me vaguely of an area in a video game where you'll have a turret section where the mounted turrets are, trained on you, almost like in a very, very miniaturized, very, very more basic version of the mounted machine gun or Gatling gun in Bloodborne in Old Yarnum, something like that, where you have an entrenched position with enemies that are firing, like, mortar fire at you from a distance, essentially. And giving you opportunities to see that coming and react to it from a distance, and then, like, take cover and snipe, or just decide to, like, do the trench run, I think is really cool. The design of the desert pyromancers over here is really odd to me. This is one of the ones that I haven't figured out how I'm supposed to feel about it, so to speak. On the one hand, it is a very, I think... Oh, shit. That's cool. Hang on. I didn't even process that. So... it's kind of silly. That feels a little weird. but I know you probably saw what happened there, but just to clarify, I shot the wall with the projectile. The projectile generated a noise stimulus that alerted the enemy to my location, and then it turned around. So I just realized that I could use this for stealth. Like, I could fire the arrow and divert an enemy's attention away from me towards the location of the arrow, and then use that to make my escape or to like try and set up a critical attack. That's really cool. I guess it makes perfect sense, but I never really thought about it. So, Desert Pyromancer's really, really interesting character design. Obviously, let's just cut right to the chase. It's a very provocative and like overtly sexualized design, and I think that might put some people on edge. To me, I do wonder like if there's a specific reason for it. But given that, you know, sexuality is not something that's really been explored all that much in these games. There are characters who are implied to have had sex, you know, if for no other reason than having children, but also like the relationships between characters are explored. But sex itself is never really depicted. There aren't any enemy designs for the most part that incorporate sex or sexuality into them very much. And so these stand out very strongly, if for no other reason than for that fact. Even something like Melania, right? Like, I guess you could argue that Melania in her Goddess of Rot form is more sexualized because she's naked, but I don't know how to say this without it sounding crazy, but the nudity doesn't feel sexualized to me in some way. Maybe I'm just missing something, but it didn't feel like her sexuality was the point of like her not happening to be wearing clothes at that point. It was more like she was, I don't know, like letting go of all of the things that made her human, including clothing, and was becoming more synonymous with the rot itself. So I don't think, I don't know if I explained that well, but it didn't quite feel the same. So I wonder why this in particular decision was made for these characters. Now, narratively, it feels really weird to have them lying like this, but anyway, narratively, you know, obviously these characters are pyromancers, and they are from a desert, so it makes perfect sense that characters who wield fire and live in a desert would be wearing very loose-fitting clothing, I guess. And I'm kind of, or like clothing that is not retaining heat to a high extent, right? That'd be very like breathable. And I'm kind of reminded of Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5, where, you know, basically they said, oh, the reason why she needs to be wearing almost nothing at all times and like taking sexy showers and stuff like that is because she breathes through her skin. And so since she breathes through her skin, like, she obviously can't be wearing clothes, so she couldn't breathe. And so I'm wondering, like, okay, which is it, right? Like, have these characters been designed specifically to look this way because it fits their environment, or has the environment been created because they want the characters to look that way? In this case, in Dark Souls, I give the benefit of the doubt, and I say I really do think they are trying to... You see the guy fell off the back of the ogre there? I really do feel like they're trying to convey something about the characters. I think they use their seduction for manipulation, they're assassins or something like that. And they like lure people in with their wiles, and then they use their pyromancy to take them out. And that's a perfectly fine sort of story to tell. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I'm spending this much time talking about it because it's just so not something that you see very often in the Souls games. Anyway. Oh yeah, the ragdoll. Yeah, that was hilarious. So I have to think about it some more. I want to go look at the lore of those characters. They were important enough to bring them back in Dark Souls 3. So, like, these aren't just some throwaway characters that they decided to put in for some exploitative purpose, as far as I can tell. They're characters that meant enough to Miyazaki and the rest of the team, it's not just him, to bring them back for the sequel. For the final culmination of the whole series, they brought these guys back, right? So, yeah. This is an interesting decision to have the... Probably gonna lose these souls. Oh well. No, god damn it. God damn it. I don't know why I made that sound. Oh well. So... Oh god. I can't see anything. Oh god, what am I gonna... This is a nightmare. Okay, hang on a second. Oh, I see, because they have like a texture that they're rendering closer to the screen, I think. Yeah, this is... Okay. Alright, homeward bound out. Okay. Let me catch up on chat a little bit. Everyone is a gangster until the horse starts talking to his glow stick. What the fuck? That's a beautiful sentence. I never knew I needed that combination of words to exist more than I do right now. So thank you for bringing that into my life. How did Radagon have children? Because you know Radagon America are no spoilers. Yeah, so I think that gets into an interesting question that also applies to the pantheon of Dark Souls 1 of, you know, we assume that characters made children the natural way, but Dark Souls 1 in particular is seems to be at least partially influenced by some Greek mythology. I hate these lizards so fucking much. And so there are stories in Greek mythology of like Athena, Zeus's daughter, if I remember correctly, basically springing fully formed in, like, clad in armor with a shield and a sword from his head. And then there's talk of people using souls to like make life. I really can't stand these fucking things. And so I think it's possible that like the children were created or given form in maybe a not literal way. Like, not to get too into it, but America's bedchamber doesn't exactly look like a very welcoming place for making children the natural way. I just put it that way. So I think there's potentially other ways to interpret it, but I guarantee you that there is an entire library of fan fiction delving into this in great and vivid and extensive detail. So if you're curious, please feel free to look into it and let me know what you find. Probably can't get too into it on stream, but yeah. Sorry, as bonus says, I give the benefit of the doubt as well. As a lesbian, I think we should have more armors. More armors like this for the sake of lore and history and science. Yes, of course. I fully agree. One second. I'm trying to get this guy to attack the door over here. He's not playing ball. Look, oh, you can see his eye through the hood. Oh, that's so cool. You can see the holes in his flesh and everything too. Okay, there we go. Okay, I just want to make sure I get this stuff. Old Knight Pike, interesting. Okay, yeah, that's good. And so something I want to be clear about is that, like, well, I don't know. As a game developer, I have to acknowledge that in the history of my medium, like, I own it, but in the history of my medium and the space that I work, women have not traditionally been portrayed very well, either in terms of the characters themselves, or the way that women in the workplace have been treated as part of the game's development community. There's a lot of growing room that we have had to do, or growing we've had to do, you know, over the years, and I think there's still a lot of room to improve. And what's frustrating is that sometimes it feels like acknowledging that there is room to improve seems to make a certain group of people very, very, very angry, and that makes things very difficult sometimes. So I try to err on the side of being like, of just at least being curious as to why, when, you know, depictions like that are put into a game, why was that decision made? Like, what was the context? And I think, like, to use kind of a weird example, it would be weird for me to say that Miyazaki only puts barefoot characters in games because he has a foot fetish. I know that's the meme. I know that people make that joke. I don't think it's super funny, and I don't think that, like, I think it has much more to do with the characters' personalities and vulnerabilities and just you know, it oftentimes just makes sense for a character like the Maiden in Black to not be wearing like big boots or something. But there are certain instances where, you know, there hasn't always been as thoughtful or mindful of decision making over the course of video games history, and so I tend to be a little wary of that. With that being said, also, like, I fucking love Bayonetta. I think she's really cool and really hot, and I hopefully that's not a controversial or a weird take. I think she was designed to kind of celebrate like a certain kind of feminine beauty in a very overt and enthusiastic way. And as far as I know, she is also generally pretty well accepted and adored by female gamers as well. So I think there is a way to do, you know, sexuality and sexiness, I should probably say is the right term, sexiness, in games, and have it be a very a very positive and powerful and awesome and cool and fun thing. I don't think sexiness is something that we should be ashamed of or like shy away from or feel that needs to be like constantly sanitized. But also we should just be aware that like when we're in an industry where people have been treated badly in the past and not like treated fairly or included in a way that feels good, that we should just be, I think, conscious of that and keep that in mind as we're making stuff. But history and quote-unquote science, I'm totally with you. Konakun says, I have a question. If a man reads a Yuri manga and like it, does it mean he's gay? I don't know. I think it'll come down to the individual's preference and experience with it. So I'm just going to speak from my personal experience. Like, I think that most people probably are a little bit more gay than they think they are, and that there is more fluidity to it. It's not just like you are either straight or you are either gay. There are probably parts of us that enjoy, I shouldn't say like more gay than we think are. I think a better way to say it is like there are parts of all of us that enjoy aspects of the beauty and the romance of our own gender. Even if it's something as simple as like you're a totally straight guy, you're not attracted to dudes at all, but you go to the gym and you see a guy with big muscles that you like, and you're like, wow, I respect that. That guy looks hot. Not like I want to bang him hot, but like I respect and appreciate and approve and admire that hot, right? Admiring a man's beauty as a straight man doesn't make you gay. It literally doesn't mean, it's not like if I am straight and I look at a man and I say that's a beautiful man, that literally factually does not make me gay. It doesn't turn me gay. It's not evidence for me being gay. All it is evidence of is the fact that I find something aesthetically pleasing about that person. If I want to fuck him, then I'm gay, but otherwise no. But also, like, I think I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so please let me know if I'm not if I'm misrepresenting you. I don't want to do that. But I will say that I think, in my experience, a lot of times when people ask, like, is it gay to do X, Y, or Z things, there's an additional layer to the question behind that, which is like, ... and is that okay? Like, is it okay if I'm a little bit gay? Is it okay if I like things that are outside of the gender norm? Is it okay if I like things that are outside of the things that I quote-unquote should like as a straight man? And my answer to that is what I was trying to say before, is that I think most people are more fluid and more on a spectrum than maybe we assume. I think most people have a little bit, like, can appreciate the beauty of their own sex in a way that's not like overtly meaning that you have like some strong overt desire, but is still, you know, oh my god. I got punished for that one. But it's still like a normal, natural thing. So what I'm doing a bad job because I'm distracted, but what I'm trying to, you don't want me to put anything in your mouth. That's right. I respect your boundaries and I respect consent. It's very important. So I'm not going to put anything in your mouth. No, that would be gay. I mean, I'm assuming gender here just for the sake of the joke, but yeah. Anyway, I really, what I'm trying very awkwardly and not very well to say is that if you pick up a manga and you enjoy it and you like the characters and it happens to have gay stuff in it, that doesn't make you gay. If you find that you are attracted or aroused or turned on or whatever by what you're reading, then that doesn't make you a gay man. It doesn't turn you from being straight into being gay. It just means that you might have a little bit more fluidity or curiosity to what you find attractive. That is okay. That is normal. That is good. Sometimes there aren't perfect words to describe the different ways that people can feel and react to things. But while you are exploring those words, if you decide to do that, just know that you are valid and the things that you are feeling and exploring are valid. And if you wind up deciding that you hate the manga, but you like boys, or you wind up deciding that you like boys and hate the manga, or anything in between, you know, it's all good. Hopefully that made some sense. Sorry Zapona says, yes, exactly. You don't have to be gay to be like, this is nice. It's like femboys, right? Not every femboy is gay, yes. But they're comfortable exploring their feminine side. All the stuff's a spectrum. Yes, 100% yes. Okay, so this is a little off topic. But since we're talking about this sort of thing. When I was a kid, I lived in Italy for a while. And when I lived there, there was a show called, I think it was called Love Line. And it was basically... It was a show where people would call in and ask for dating advice, essentially. And this lesbian couple came in. And, sorry, it's about to get, like, slightly past PG-13 here for a second, so viewer discretion is advised. But they were, like, slightly... They were calling in, and they were like, we are a lesbian couple. We do not like men or are attracted to men at all. But we wanted to use a dildo. And... I had this thought that we should use it and that it would be fun, but but does that make me straight? They were like, I want to use this thing, but it would make us straight, right? Because it's a penis and we don't have those and we're not attracted to those. So help us out. What can we do that will allow us to have pleasure together, but won't make us straight? And the guy... like in a very friendly way, like the people in the show talked to them and was like, no, liking this thing that you two play with together that makes you feel good doesn't make you anything other than like in love and into each other. This is an object that is shaped this way for a reason, and it does something, and that something is good, and you enjoy it, and that's it. Like, if you then find yourself a little bit attracted to men, then okay, then you're a little bit straight. And that's fine too. But just enjoying this thing for what it is doesn't make you anything. It just makes you, I guess, like, open to having a good experience with your partner. And I don't know why, but for whatever reason, that became like a core memory. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so the interlopers. Oh, hey, interlopers. Thank you for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the stream. Thank you. Of course, my voice starts cracking now. Thank you. I appreciate the support there. I'm bisexual myself, and I've gone through a bit of a back and forth on figuring that out, figuring out what that term means and how it fits into my life. And so I, wish I had had somebody to talk to about it a bit more while I was going through things. But either way, yeah, like, it is okay to like things and to feel different things about things and to be who you are. That's very important that you know that. So, I like manga and I like girls. I was about to say I like both of those things. I also like manga and I also like women, and sometimes I also like men, but slightly less frequently. But either way, I'm glad that you have found what you like, and I hope that you will feel safe and encouraged to continue exploring what you like, wherever that leads you. Be kind to yourself, be open-minded, and just kind of see what feels right for you. Nobody else gets to tell you what is or isn't right for you. It's my base take. Konata and Kagami exists. I need to kind of bone up on my Lucky Star lore. Sorry, even the writer of Lucky Star have said that Kagami has feelings for Konata. You know what I should have answered this this with, which would have been a better answer. You know, let me ask you before I just say it outright. Do you know that there was an interview in one of the data books with Kishimoto? And they asked him, which Naruto character would you date if you could? Do you know which one he said? I'd be curious to see. And if you don't, I'll tell you, but I'm just curious if you know off the top of your head. Italy, Rep, I knew you were cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I lived there for quite a few years. I miss it. I don't have much opportunity to go back and visit these days. But yes, I actually kind of taught myself to, well, I'm oversimplifying here, but I was going to say I taught myself to Italian through Dragon Ball manga, because even though like I took Italian classes in my school, ultimately you're only going to learn so much from that. You have to kind of talk to people to learn like slang and the lingo and all of the like the little parts of the language, you know what I mean, to kind of really integrate. And so a big amount of the vocabulary that I learned was literally just from like picking up Dragon Ball, and I'm probably going to die. Picking up Dragon Ball, confronting my mortality, and then feeling like, oh hey friend, picking up Dragon Ball and then feeling like I would come across something that I didn't understand, colloquialism or something like that, and then just bringing it to my teacher and saying like, hey, what the hell does this mean? You know, can you explain? Or talking to a friend and trying to get an understanding of that, and seeing all that stuff in context was so so useful. Yeah, kind of losing my train of thought. Let's see. Kagami is just a tsundere, so she wouldn't say it. Okay, I will try to bone up a little bit on Lucky Star stuff. Which character? Itachi? Close. Interlopers got it right. It was Shikamaru. Yep, Shikamaru. I think he said that he would pick Shikamaru because Shikamaru is so like reliable and dependable, and he would make a good companion for those reasons. So does that make Kishimoto gay, or does he just have good taste, or a little bit of both?
Sorry to have burdened you so. This is for you, by way of an apology. I found my thoughts growing hazy. My memories are fading, oldest first.
Wait, sorry. I don't know if you want to reveal personal stuff on stream. It's no problem. But I'm curious.
Terribly so.
I thought you
Everything should fade.
Sorry, 1 second. I shouldn't talk over it.
What will be left of me?
Did you say that you were I said something about like the French version of Naruto the other day in Sage's server, and I thought you said something like French represent or something like that. Are you French/Italian? Of course, you don't have to answer if that's like, I know people don't like sharing personal stuff on stream. Just curious. Yeah, let's get back to Lucatiel.
Older brother. We learned to fence together. He became the most decorated swordsman in all of Mirror. I never even compared to him. In fact, I never beat him. Not once. But then, one day, he was gone. Lost without a trace. Now I'm certain that he was taken by the curse. If only someone would hear my tale. My brother must have come here, too. Soon I may forget even about him. If only someone would hear my brother must have. Soon I may forget.
So I think Lucatiel's story tends to impact people a lot because like that line there, like if only somebody would hear my tale, if only somebody would hear me, you're right there. You're standing right next to them, and they still, I think she still can't quite process and realize that she actually has made the connection that she's still yearning for. It's very sad to see her slip away, and especially like as you as a player are learning her better and growing closer to her, understanding her better, she loses herself more and more and more with every engagement. Like, not directly as a consequence of you talking to her, but over the course of your engagement with her. I should probably go back and like level up real quick. I wanted to do Covetous Demon before I close for the night, but yeah, I need some life gems. So, or I want to allocate my soul so I don't lose them. But so on the one hand, you have this character that you're getting to know better, and also developing a closer relationship with, and at that very same time, the inverse is happening with her, where she's losing herself. She's becoming less and less aware of your presence near her, and it's very, very sad, but also a very compelling story. I think I have to burn, totally forgot about my Sublime Bone Dust as well. And when you contrast that with the other, I'll get some life gems and then I'll go back to it. When you contrast that with the story of Chloanne, who's basically like, oh yeah, I don't even know why the fuck I showed up here, and I found some skulls, and I guess they're kind of like rocks. I could sell them to your dumbass, I mean to you, dear customer. Would you like some? Totally rocks that you could totally put into your weapons or whatever. And then while that's happening, you have Lucatiel like losing her very sense of self after coming here to face the curse itself, like the abstract eldritch terror of the curse, and trying to save her brother from his doom and following the same path, or following the same fate. It's just a really interesting juxtaposition of like motivations and characters that I find quite interesting. Let me see a second. Let me catch up first before I go. Oh my god, the Tool quote. Tool was my favorite band for a long time. I haven't listened to them in a while, but yeah, that's got a big rush of nostalgia there. All this pain is an illusion. I remember that vividly. Yeah. Is that from Lateralis? Been so long. Be curious to hear your thoughts on Fear Inoculum, and whether or not you thought it was like a good follow-up to 10,000 Days. Sorry, Zapona says, I'm probably going to die from soft players when literally anything happens in the games they play. Yep, I mean, it's basically just like a constant passive thing occurring in the back of your head while you're playing. French-Italian, that's awesome. It's really cool. My, I also speak a little French, but badly. I can understand it, like, I went to a... Shit. Fuck, hang on. I do like the fact that they stop ticking down the poison while you're prone. I think it would feel like pretty sadistic if they kept that going. But also, when you're poisoned, you can kind of give less of a fuck about other sources of poison, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I went to a French-speaking place at some point in the recent history, and I was able to kind of understand some things, but not really to remember how to say anything. Oh, it's from Parabola, okay. Okay, I'm going to focus on the boss, then I'll catch up on chat, and then I think probably going to start winding down for the evening. I specifically didn't talk for a second there, or fight the boss, because I wanted to listen to the music, and I'll say something about that in just a second. Okay, so I think at a certain point in the fight, he can knock down those jars. If you look at those jars, you can see that there are hollows kind of kind of writhing around in there, and he can knock them down and they will come after you or do poison to you or something. And so I think something you can do is try to shoot them down as well. Might be misremembering that, but maybe like if he like flops into one of them, I forget. You can also see under his chest area there are these little like flipper things. Listen to the music. Okay, there we go. Nice. Mostly I just wanted to get access to the bonfire. Am I misremembering that? Can you not knock them down? I thought you could. Or that he could. See? No, I guess not. I made that up. Still a pretty striking image there. Part of the reason why I wanted to... Oh, I'm out of bolts. Shit, whatever. Part of the reason why I wanted to call that out, the music, is because you may have heard that little, like, refrain there. The da-da-da... I'm not going to try and sing it out loud. But there was, like, a note progression in that shows up in the themes of a couple of other enemies in the game, bosses in the game. And in the same way that, like, in Dark Souls 1... Quailag's theme, and I think what's his name, Ceaseless Discharge, and maybe one other have this a leitmotif is what it's called. I think it's like a little recurring musical theme that plays in characters that are connected to the Sisters of Chaos, and then there's another one that plays for Gwendolyn, and then also plays or the Moonlight Butterfly, which creates a connection between the two of them. And the composer did the same thing in this game too, where they have a theme that plays for a few of the demonic style enemies, like the Covetous Demon, and then I can't remember if it's Najka or Mitha. I think it's Najka. And so there definitely seems to be like a specific demon leitmotif, which is pretty cool. So that being said, let me catch up on stream, on chat. I mentioned this before. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied, I guess. But I do want to do a stream where I go through the soundtrack and talk about like how I think, it's very subjective, but how I think the soundtrack is doing some storytelling of its own, and the little like hints and stuff that are scattered throughout the soundtrack. But that being said, I want to take a couple more weeks, I think, to just listen to it carefully. I have immediate opinions, but I want to see, like, I'm going to go back and listen to, like, the Dark Souls and Demon Souls soundtracks and see how that changes, and make sure that I'm kind of prepared to talk about it a little bit better. So, let's continue with the comments. Power scaling is all about interpretation. Some guy on the internet. Yeah, that would be me. I would be one of the voices in that chorus, so to speak. I think power scaling... to me, anyway, the idea behind power scaling is that you use like reason and logic and math and careful argumentation to develop a deep and precise understanding of the source material, and then use that maybe competitively with other people if you want to, but use that data that you've gathered to help understand the story better and help other people understand the story better as well, and then have like kind of fun competitions about all that information. But we're at the end of the day, we are always talking about art, and I think it's important not to forget that. Not that art can't be objectively understood to a certain extent, but you can't like fully appreciate it if you totally abandon like an understanding of the arty parts of art, if that makes sense, or just force this very particular limited view of it, in my opinion. So Saria says a lot of people immediately realize I'm French once they hear my accent, and I'll admit I hate my accent. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But you know, you learn to live with it. I think it's a really cool sounding accent. Maybe I'm biased because I grew up with people who sounded similar or whatever, but I mean, like, I think it sounds really cool. It's like this unique sounding like hybrid that's got cool sounds to it. Sorry, I'm not doing a great job with my words tonight, I guess, but hopefully you know, I hope you feel like proud of it. I think you should. Um, then yeah, Konakun says, "No worries, I speak English so badly that people literally laugh, but it's no big deal." I'm sorry to hear that, Konakun. For what it's worth, as far as I can tell, on the stream, like I wouldn't have guessed that you're not fluent in English. Like everything you say is totally understandable. Like I don't think there's any reason anybody should make fun of you anyway. But even so, like there's no reason I could find here. Um, so, oh, sorry. Before I forgot, I wanted to say that I really liked. Um, I listened to one of your videos. I think it's about the a hero of wind being very powerful, and something that really struck me about the video was you were describing how uh, Link is potentially like walking at the speed of light or like walking through time because everything else is frozen when he gets to Hyrule, but he's not able to. So relative to them, like he's basically like time, like he has more power over time. I'm doing a bad job of summarizing what you said. I'm sorry, but uh, it sounded really really cool, and I never really thought about it that way. So just want to say I appreciate that. Saria says, "Oh, it's from Parabola," says Konakun. Yeah, my bad. Sorry, I haven't listened to um Tool in a long time. I should get back into it. It was very, very important music to me in a very formative period of my life. So I should have fucking known that. Um, I never got to see them in concert. I hope I do someday. Saria says, I love this boss mostly because of the design. Yeah, I would say it's one of those bosses that you could call like a narrative boss or something because it doesn't have maybe the most intricate move set or whatever. But it's still a very compelling design. And I have a lot to say about it. Maybe I will start next stream by kind of going over some of it, throwing in a bonfire aesthetic and really talking about it more. Um, but yeah, the design is really compelling. Very tragic, very gross, but also in that traditionally like kind of endearing from software way. I can read and write English, says Konakun. Fine, but I cannot speak properly. I stutter a lot, and my accent is kind of bad. Oh, okay, I understand. Stuttering is difficult to deal with. I've dealt with it a little bit. Previous partner of mine, her father, was somebody who dealt with that as well. And it can be tough. There are resources out there that maybe you can look into helping yourself. I hope you won't feel that anything is wrong with you. It's just it's a challenge that I think hopefully you find a way to be comfortable with. But hope you don't like look down on yourself because of it or anything like that. It's a pretty normal thing. Gunakun says this is the first Souls game Yuka Kitamura worked on, right? Yeah, I believe so. Motoi Sakuraba, or I forget the other composer. There's another um, composer who also worked on it, and you can tell pretty clearly. Like you can hear some of Kitamura's. I'll point this out in the music stream, but there's a couple of things you can notice. Like Kitamura uses different, I think, virtual music instruments than the other composer, and so it's you can tell like, oh, those are the same like female choir samples that are used in the Dark Souls 3 theme, or this is something that was used during the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, and you can kind of start to recognize how she approaches like chord progression and the implementation of like rhythm and stuff like that. She has her own voice. But the other composer, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the name, does a really good job of pushing kind of weird, experimental, out there, abrasive stuff that feels really good too. So they each have their own styles and they kind of combine very nicely in this game. Dark Souls 2. I don't know where I was going with that. Yes, this Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, good game. I can read and write English fine. Oh, right. This is my first Souls game. Oh, I read that. Again, sorry. Sorry's opponent then says the music is so powerful in FromSoft's games. To be fucking honest, what's the F for? But yeah, to be fully honest, yes, I agree. And what's more is that the soundtracks themselves are super compelling and fun to listen to, and also they almost always do some really interesting storytelling. Like, now I want to save it for the music stream. I'm so eager to start talking about this, but I can't go on for much longer tonight. But I will just say, if you want to on your own, go listen to the theme for the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. from Dark Souls 3. My weird, crazy tinfoil hat theory is that the song itself is meant to kind of represent the fact that the dancer is trapped and struggling against herself being trapped and trying to recall and to retain some part of like glory and beauty, but constantly being forced back into like submission by Sullivan. And again, it could be total bullshit. It could, because you could take that track and put it on another character and have it work just fine. But I like looking for things like that, and I think maybe it's like a Rorschach test or whatever, where you will just find whatever your brain is looking for. But at the very least, I think that Kitamura creates really, really good Rorschach tests or ink blots or whatever that make it very easy and fun to then look for the shapes in them. Hopefully that made some sense. And then Konakun says she cooked with the Suralon theme. Yes, absolutely. My favorite is probably the Sin, the Slumbering Dragon theme, but Suralon is great too. Sorry, Zapona then says, yes, I agree about storytelling in the music is something people don't talk enough about. Yes, 100%. Like, did you know that while you're in the Divine Beasts, the music keys are playing SOS? In the Divine Beasts. Oh, the, from, Breath of the Wild. No, I didn't know that. That's awesome, though. I'll have to go listen to it. I do, so something that I've worked on that I could talk about at some point if you're interested is I did some work designing like dynamic music systems. So what my job was, it sounds fancier than it is. Basically, like if you go into a game and you're wandering around, like in Skyrim, right? You're wandering around in Skyrim and like a wolf comes up to you and starts biting you. Well, now you're in combat, and so combat music should play. And the wolf runs away or you beat it, then combat music should stop. And then if you go a couple layers deeper, maybe you have the music escalate and change if a dragon shows up and switches to a dragon fight theme, and then escalate down, or de-escalate rather, if the dragon leaves, etc. So just adding a couple little layers to music coming in and out like that. And getting tongue-tied. I have so much respect and curiosity for the way that they approached designing music in Breath of the Wild. As far as I can tell, they have a procedural system where they have either recorded a whole bunch of little music snippets, or they have MIDI instruments that are playing in real time, and they are essentially like constantly remixing and reforging and warping and generating the music as you play in response to what you do. It's essentially like having a live orchestra that accompanies the way that you play the game. And that's really, really cool. Difficult to do well. And I'll be happy to talk about that more as well, although I want to do a little bit more research. But yeah, when you're like climbing up a tower and one of those little guardians or sentries or whatever they are, like sights you and then starts firing at you, there's this perfect progression in the music. And I think Noah Gervais or maybe Joseph Anderson, somebody smarter than me, figured out that the direction was apparently to make it sound like the sounds that robots would make if the robots were musical instruments, basically. Or if it was nature making robotic sounds. So, like, if you listen to the sounds that play when you're fighting the Guardians, the Sentries, whatever they're called, it's a lot of, like, kind of very quick rapid fire, like very mathematically strict and segmented things that almost sounds like machine gun fire, just jumping all over the place. That's not the sort of music that humans of that era would, that traditional instrumentation, it's very, very hard. Like if you try to play something like that on a guitar, you have to use extended techniques like tapping, for example. On a piano, it's maybe not so difficult, but it still feels a little unnatural and a little frenetic for a human player. So the idea is that they were trying to merge the natural with the mechanical by making natural sounding things but performing them in a way that felt kind of inhuman, which is a really, really cool idea. And then so it doesn't surprise me that they're doing other cool shit like that. Am I interested in visual novels, Konakun? I probably am. I mean, I read a lot of manga. and so I think those count as visual novels, right? Oh, you're talking about like graphic novels like Preacher and like modern comic books like that, or are you talking about um like interactive stuff like Doki Doki Literature Club or Steins Gate or stuff like that? Not as much fun, not as much of a fan of Steins Gate and Danganronpa and things like that, just because that's a whole other topic. But I personally find that heavy reliance on puns and cat girls and stuff to be a little bit much for my tastes. Nothing against cat girls. It's just like I need to be like constantly moving and twitching and pushing buttons and stuff when I'm in a game, and like I didn't have the patience to kind of get through those games, and they were the cat girls and the puns were not enough to kind of keep me invested. Saria says, you say it sounds fancier than what it is, but I think it's actually incredibly fascinating. Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting. Oh yeah, the topic itself, I agree. Just the very basic implementation that I had done was not on the level of what the Breath of the Wild people were doing. I wasn't trying to take credit for a system like that. That's all I was trying to say. Um, like the stuff is basically modern day magic. I don't care what anyone says. I love hearing the ins and outs. Well, I'm happy to share. You know, I'm really am passionate about game design, and so I'm happy to share my experiences. Certain things I can't mention what specific companies I worked at or whatever because of non-disclosure agreements, but I can always talk about the systems in the abstract. If you're interested in learning more about dynamic music, it's something I know a bit about, and I can talk about sort of how I worked on things in another stream. Konakun says, if you're interested to read The House in Fata Morgana. Oh, I've heard of that, yeah. It's my favorite piece of fiction ever and has my favorite character in all of media. Okay, awesome, yeah. I'm sorry, I should know this, but I just forget names sometimes. Are we both in Sage's server are you in my Roost Discord server? If you would be so kind as to send me a message reminding me of that, like a PM or something like that. Same name on Discord, John the Maven. That would be great. I'll try to write it down after the stream and to look it up myself, but if you're comfortable sending a Discord message, feel free to send that to me to remind me. And if not, if I am not actively talking about it on the next stream, you're well within your rights to to nudge me and to get me into it. Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, I switched the camera. Sorry if that disorients people. Keep forgetting that I have my mouse so close. Yeah, I do have a Discord server. It's very very rudimentary. Basically, I just made it so that people could gather after streams and chat or have a VC there if they wanted to talk about something. But it's it's not like Sage's where it's got all of these different. Why am I blanking? Yeah, it's I haven't like put a ton of effort into fully designing it yet. It's just very basic, but yes, it exists, and pretty much anyone is welcome as long as people are friendly and nice to each other. People are welcome to come and drop scans or have conversations. I think Auhurt and Spectre and Mr. Narrative and Kakazu and Holidays, I think they were all having a chat a little while ago. Might be missing somebody, but yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. If you like, I can just send you an invite from Sage's. You're more than welcome to stop by. Oh yeah, so I think I should go check on stuff in the house. So I'll probably need to wrap things up for this evening. But I really had an awesome time talking to you guys. I really appreciate the conversation and the enthusiasm as always. Oh, Konakun, yeah, you're absolutely welcome to join. Is your username and profile picture like that? Or actually here. I haven't figured out how to do like a link yet. I think I have to boost the server or whatever. But if you search me, it's the same exact name, John the Maven. Send me a friend request, and I'd be more than happy to accept that and to add you to the server, no problem. So yeah, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up for the night. But again, like, thank you so much for the conversation. And we talked about some stuff that was more kind of outside of the realm of regular Dark Souls, like more lifestyle stuff. I hope everybody felt comfortable with all of that. At the end of the day, just wanted to convey that like you are legitimate and good in your explorations of yourself, and you get to decide what that means to you, and you should feel like safe in doing so. Um, and plans going forward. So I had a lot of fun with the Cockatoo versus Pain stream and the Noodles reaction video last Sunday. I'm gonna try to get through the rest of the video this Sunday. It might take 2 more streams because, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but I played through the video again on my own, trying to like prep for it, like research or whatever you want to call it, and I stopped every single sentence. I'm not saying that to be a jerk. I'm not saying that for hyperbole or hype or whatever. I stopped every single sentence and had something that I wanted to say to kind of challenge it. So it might take us 2 more streams, but we're going to keep going with that on Sunday. And then more Dark Souls 2 next Thursday. Sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be doing the music stream. I'll let you guys know in advance with the community post about what the plans are. But so far, no other changes to the schedule. Please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, comments, any of that stuff. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great week.